lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
A half-second lead on with the silvering colour in the background.
He has, oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive accident.
Knocks to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the halfway point of this year's Automobilista Australia GT3 World Series. 4 rounds in the bank and 4 different winners, would you believe? Are we going to make it 5 from the 5 rounds by the time tonight's proceedings are over and done with? Well, this circuit in Leicestershire in the British Midlands is going to throw up a very, very unique 90-minute challenge, and for a very rare occasion, it's the second time we visit a country in a season. We were in Silverstone for round number 1, and we find ourselves here at Donington Park GP layout for the 5th round of 9 in the series. Pleasure to have you aboard tonight. My name is Steve DeVries, welcoming as always my commentary partners into broadcast tonight, Josh Bagsy Bags and Michael the Floodman Zalavari. Gents, good evening.
Evening, Nether. It's nice to be here back in Britain. I missed the first race, of course, in Silverstone, so first English race for me. And a track that probably doesn't get much thought. Used to host the F1, and not much else. People might know it from games like Toka Race Driver, Viet Supercar Race Driver, those ones, but often gets overlooked.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Basie. Good evening, Nether. One of my favourite tracks, actually, Donington Park, and one of the reason for that is those long sweeping corners. Actually does host the MotoGP Grand Prix of one of the, for a little while at least. So you might recognise it from that. But yeah, one of my favourite circuits that should get more love than it does, I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's been a circuit that's been through a plethora of different games over the course of time. Of course, this was a circuit that we ran back in the day at Porsche Cup in 2018, and then it had a bit of a hiatus. Back then it was actually a mod track, and since then Razor have come along and put it into their DLC content, so it's a little bit different visually compared to what it was back in the day, but still presents a very, very unique challenge. And you're right, it is a circuit that we have seen in motorsport in general have a plenty of different use. It's played host to Formula One, it's played host to MotoGP. It's going to be a unique challenge for these drivers. The undulation here in the middle of England is a bit different to what we had at Silverstone some 4 or 5 rounds ago.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something I really like in a racetrack is those sweeping corners going cresting hills right into the bottom of the valley as well. And this track has a lot of it. I think we'll see a lot of challenge in the middle of the circuit through turns 4 and 5, getting right into the bottom of the valley. And then as we get to the top of the circuit as well through turns, I think that's 7, 8, and 9 across the top. That's going to be really interesting to see how people cope with the challenges made by the undulation.
So sort of the difference between building a track around an airfield, which requires it to be flat, versus being able to just chuck one anywhere you want in the countryside for Donington. It's one of those things where it makes for a much better track, but also a much more difficult track. You're going to have, especially when there's apexes on corners that are right on crests and things like that. This makes it very easy to lock a brake and run a bit wide, and it's all gravel here for the most part. If you run off, you're going into gravel, so you're either continuing to spin out or you're going to struggle to get out, and it's not a lot of concrete. Something that people probably also remember this track for is not the lap of the gods like we had last week at Bathurst with Greg Murphy, but lap of the gods from Senna in the 93 Grand Prix, where he went from 4th down to 5th and up to 1st in the space of a lap. So I wonder if anyone will be able to have that good a start tonight.
I'm not sure about that, Bagsy, but I know that there are definitely a few people at the pointy end of the timesheets in practice at the moment that certainly could be trying to hold a candle to Senna in terms of producing a really, really good lap time. But in terms of producing laps, we've produced quite a lot of them already, nearly 200 laps, or actually probably slightly over, I think, just doing some quick math in my head, in the championship so far. And these are the point standings coming into tonight. So 4 rounds complete, as we said, tonight, halfway through tonight's race will be the halfway point of this season. But Bagsy, the leaders out in front have it's not comfortable for Steve Bolger, is it? He's still got quite a number of drivers breathing down his neck, and even pretty much right down to Lewis Wedding and Zurus. Theoretically, I mean, they get a couple of good rounds under their belt, and they're right back in this.
They certainly are, and part of it's going to be consistency. Wedding and Zurus have both missed rounds, so that's cost them points because this championship is about consistency. And that's what Bolger's had. Only the one win. And as you said at the top of the broadcast, we've had 4 different winners from 4 different races, and they are the top 4 in the championship. But Bolger has been the one who's managed to consistently put in other good positions. He's been podium placed for, I believe, 3 of the 4, at least 2. And it's reflected in the fact that he's at the top of the championship. Also had a couple of people who are probably doing a bit better than we might have expected. Termo down there, Brendan Ross, both have missed rounds but are still doing quite well. Ozrob has been doing quite well ahead of a couple of the people who are considered the higher echelon of drivers.
Yeah, and a few wildcards mixing it up there as well. People like Wayne Spencer, only new to the series this year, and actually new to a number of Automobilista Australia series as well. Inside the top 12 there in his Ferrari, just going about his own business nicely. Him and his son have certainly made an impact in this series. We take a look at the team's points as well, which is a new innovation for this year. Clear out in front, the Gravel Shed Racing team from the Wedding Crashers Racing team as well, or Wedding Crashers Motorsport, I believe I like to be called. Lamborghini, the dominant car in this year's championship, with about 7 or 8 drivers actually deciding that's their breed of choice and doing wonders at the top of the field. Still all to play for a number of drivers down the field, a number of teams further down the field as well. And I think the VEFI team from Roadhog is no longer taking part, but still has accrued some points to stay there on the standings for the time being. Michael, time to throw to you for this one. Tonight's race info, here it is. The Donington Park GP circuit. Walk us through it.
Yeah, Donington Park, a 4.02 kilometre circuit, 13 corners. We're looking at a number of laps around the 60 to 64 mark in this 90-minute evening. And really, as we've already made mention of, the defining feature of this track is the undulation. It is probably, of the tracks that we've gone to, probably second. Oh, well, we've been to the mountain, we've been to Spielberg, which are also mountain tracks, really. But it's certainly in there with the undulation. Something that I really want to harp on about tonight is curbs and track limits. We've already seen in practice a number of drivers complain about the track limits in this circuit. And so much so that, in fact, we've been given an additional track cut for the race tonight. So normally it would be 4 and then you start receiving penalties. Tonight you get 5. And the reason for that is that it's quite tough on track limits, especially at turn 4 down at the bottom of the hill and through the chicane that leads onto the hairpins in the last sector. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the race. But really, I love this track for the undulation and the long sweeping corners that just encourage you to take as much of the curb and as much of the throttle as you can possibly get throughout the track. So we're gonna see some good racing tonight.
I think you're right. There's nothing like building a circuit to the land in which it lays. And we've seen that with Bathurst, we've seen that with Spielberg in Austria, and we're seeing that again tonight as well. They've basically taken countryside and decided we can put a corner here and a straight here and present a really unique challenge for these drivers. Some iconic corner names in there as well. Redgate, the first corner. Hollywood, the run down the hill, which is very, very fast sweeping, but you can see it just on our second run through coming up right now on the video behind the map there. Copper's Corner, which is that really tricky uphill braking corner that leads you onto the back straight as well. You've got to sort of spot the corner and brake it just precisely the right moment so you don't lose too much speed, but you carry enough speed to not let anybody else get onto your tail getting onto that long straight into the braking zone. Plenty of unique challenges. And the most interesting point of the whole equation is right at the very bottom there. There are no GT3 track records in Automobilista Australia for this circuit. This is our first visit here. Like a number of circuits this year on the calendar, there are plenty of opportunities for some drivers to get a little bit of a slice of history under their belts.
Who do we reckon is gonna take that slice of history first? We've seen fastest laps so far this season from Devonish, from Bolger. I think Xeris has had a good run or once or twice. Who do we reckon's got the ponies behind them tonight?
I reckon there's a good chance it could be Will Devonish again, but it's anyone's guess. We've seen the time start to fall quite dramatically in the last few laps as people start to do low fuel runs and go for the useless but still slightly coveted title of best practice time. Some might say it's not covered at all, but I have written down a couple from the last couple of races. So Bolger had it last race from Devonish. He'll be happy to know that he's got that. I mean, he would have been happy to win the race, but he came second, so that's all good too.
Yeah, it's very tight at the top at the moment as well. There's a few drivers just starting to post their last few qualifying runs before we get into qualifying, and we're getting to a low 26s now. We have seen some 25s during the practice sessions during the week as well. So anything's possible here. I reckon there's a decent 4 or 5 guys that could end up with a qualifying track record tonight.
Yeah, and interesting to note as well, as the night wears on, they actually become a bit more tolerant of track limits. I think in the practice they're quite hard on track limits, but then as you get into qualifying and into the race, it starts to be a bit more lenient. So there's every possibility that we could see the fastest lap of the evening in the race as you're able to use more of the track to achieve that race lap.
And it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case as well, Michael, because we've seen this quite a lot in a number of AMS Oz series over the course of time, most predominantly in the Supercars series last year, where the track records carried over from. But then it was only a 1 lap shootout or 1 or 2 lap shootout last year. That whole format has changed this year, and you've got 15-minute sessions. So in a situation like this, you're right, it could very well end up if you get into a groove, and some drivers like to spend 2, 3, 4 laps building up to their ultimate pace, working the tyres in, getting the car right in the window where they want it before banging in their quick lap. So it could change dramatically, and the other thing that affects it too is running in the slipstream of another car. We probably won't see a lot of that in qualifying, but we're probably going to see plenty of it in the race.
Well, I wouldn't think the slipstream would be too much of a coveted item tonight. There's not really any long straights. I think maybe the longest is between Coppice and the S's, so between turns 8 and 9 at the top of the hill. But even then, you're only just scratching the very limit of switching into 6th gear. So maybe slipstream, I think, might be almost unwanted. You might want to stay out of the wake of another car just so that way you've got your own room to do your own thing, because a lot of the corners on this track are downforce corners or higher load corners that you really want to have the free air ahead of you to make sure that you're getting the maximum downforce, the maximum aerodynamic effect. So maybe not the slipstream tonight, but certainly as the race wears on, as people get more into the groove, we could see some quicker laps.
Bagsy, cornering, big thing at this circuit. There's plenty of medium to high speed corners, so the Lamborghini probably says it maybe has a slight advantage in that department over some of the bigger cars like the Benz.
Yeah, potentially. Honestly, I think the biggest advantage the Lamborghini has had has been the driver of Will Devonish and the way he's able to set up that car to just power through corners super effectively all the time. He's always able to get the power down, very little wheel slip, very little at all, really, compared to a lot of other people. You see them, his drive out the corner just sends him away from everyone else, doesn't give anyone else a chance. So if he's able to have that car hooked up and remain hooked up throughout 3 fairly long stints, then he's going to do quite well.
100%. He has been the class of the Lamborghini drivers for a little while now. He's been stuffed a little bit by the incident that happened back at Brazil, which is why he doesn't currently lead the standings. That's honours gone to Steve Bolger, but he has been one of the quickest drivers over the course of 1 lap in terms of ultimate pace this season. And speaking of the 1 lap pace, it is that time, ladies and gentlemen, that we go qualifying.
Just a quick update on the practice standings for those who care, which is probably very few, but you never know. Will Devonish topped practice, followed by Xeris, followed by Steve Bolger. Just over a tenth between those top three, and only 400ths between Devonish and Xeris, so they've got it all to play for in qualifying.
And interesting to note that we didn't actually see anyone drop into the 25s in that session. We saw a few 25s, as Nether said, during the week, but not in that practice session. So we could see some, hopefully we'll see some 25s in this session, because that's where we want to see this pace at, don't we? We want to see the absolute maximum that these guys can get to.
Oh yeah, we want to see them max the potential of these cars. And a couple of takers at the end of pit lane already. Now, who have we got sitting there? We're looking at this on the long shot. So
Xeris is first up,
Wow.
followed by Lime Mitch and Wayne Spencer, and then Liam Spencer following him from the looks of it. So Xeris really wanting to get out there, put as many laps in as possible, because the track is still going to start rubbering up a bit more as the session goes on. So you do want to be out there at the end. Xeris seeming to think he wants some clear track. As Michael hinted earlier, or rather outright said, it's only a 4 kilometre long track, so it's actually smaller than it looks for the most part, and smaller than the lap time really portrays as well. So it's very easy for traffic to affect your lap here.
Yeah.
We've already got 7, 8, 9 people out of the pits, but that's less than half the field, and Xeris is already more than halfway through Sector 2, in fact, almost at the start of Sector 3. So traffic is going to be a big issue.
And it's very similar to Spielberg in the fact that there's no real easy spot to pass traffic on this track either. Really, the only nice and clear-cut spot to pass is into the S's. Otherwise, you've got a lot of flowing high-speed corners back to back to back. So it's very difficult for a car maybe on a slower lap to get out of the way. And if you come onto a slower car on a hot lap, you could you could just be in trouble. You could just lose that lap straight out.
It's probably not a bad idea then that Xeris has gone to the head of the field or the head of the pit lane and gotten out first. Now, there are actually a couple of other cars that are just starting to emerge from the pit lane as he comes around the final corner, so they'll be pretty much having to look in their rearview mirrors immediately. Xeris probably should put the headlights on just to make them aware that he's on a hot lap to commence this session. I think that might be Greg Turra, one of the other cars that's just ahead of Xeris on track at the moment. Just missed it going down the hill.
You got Brian Walsh, according to the live races.
There we go. So actually, Brian Walsh in the Lamborghini making an appearance tonight. Now, Wes Xeris has run wide there just at turn 4. That, as you alluded to, Michael, is one of the very couple of spots where drivers could find themselves in a little bit of trouble if they run all 4 wheels outside the white lines for too long. I myself am guilty of doing that in the Porsche Cup Series a couple of years ago here. A little bit slidey going up through Coppice. And he's approaching the second one right now. Just gives a flash of the lights to let Brian Walsh know that he's coming. Does he register a time? Walsh gets on the grass. Registers a second sector split, so Xeris is not too bad. Right here is the second of the track cuts, and Xeris has done that pretty well.
Yeah, it's got all this beautiful AstroTurf on the inside of the curbs to encourage you to use all of it and then penalizes you for it. So we could see a wide variance of times through the S's, but Xeris at the moment looks very, very comfortable through those slower speed corners. Now through the very difficult final corner, the camber of this corner is all off the entire way around. So we could see the first shot in anger for the evening, and it is Xeris who puts in a 26.4. So about half a second away from what we were expecting. Ooh, as Cracker almost takes out Xeris coming out the pits. So about half a second away from the outright pace we were seeing in practice. And in fact, we should hopefully be seeing a little quicker later on the session.
I think we'll be potentially about to see something quicker from Steve Bolger. He's just rounding the final corner now. And he had a moderately slow first sector, okay middle sector, still 0.3 off of Xeris. Usually have Will Devonish, he waited until about the 2.5 minute mark to even bother getting onto the track. And from the looks of it, he's managed to get himself a little bit of a gap, but still a bunch of traffic around that's been affecting him. If the only person who's got a proper gap at the moment is Xeris, he's got about half a sector in front of him.
Just 9 cars have set the time so far, the latest of those being Gary Neville in the Lamborghini. Here's Will Devonish through Sector 1, 7 thousandths of a second up, so it's not a huge chunk up, but it is a purple first sector for Devonish. Xeris, actual fact, has gone quicker in the middle sector, purpled and beat his own sector. He was a 18.7. It was slightly off his pace in the first sector on this flying lap, and he is on a 33.2 for a middle sector, so which again we said is purples. That's looking pretty good for him to lower his time. Although
He's
Will
just gone
Devonish
through
is
the
just,
last sector.
and Will
He's
Devonish
just
is
gone through the
actually.
last.
Very good.
Go ahead, Nether.
Yeah. Will Devonish has actually just taken that sector off him in terms of a quick time, but Xeris does not improve his lap time on this current two up. But Devonish looks straight to go to pole position here. Ooh, you've just seen something
Greg Turrow's just gone to the top on
There he
a
goes.
26 flat. It was no purple sectors for Turrow, but just a good all-round lap, and that sends him to the top.
Yeah, that is a pretty handy time, actually. He was about second or third in terms of the sector count. Devonish goes P2 by a half a tenth. In actual fact, Greg Tara had a purple second and a purple last now that the timing screen has updated itself, with Xeris holding a purple first sector on this tour, and he's actually up. Xeris is up again at the second sector split, not by very much, but he's up on his own PB, fractionally up on the pole man. Yeah, and Devonish is also going too. So heavy hitters starting to come to the play very, very early. We normally don't see it this early. Normally within the last 3 or 4 minutes is where it all starts to become a bit clearer.
Do have a few big names still in the shed as well. Lewis Wedding, Brendan Foley, both still in the pits and yet to set a lap. So potentially waiting for it to quiet down a bit out on track, which is a dangerous game to play because the more time you're waiting in the pits, the less time you have for good laps.
Here we go. We're into the 25. Xeris posted 25.9. So
wow.
Now, to give you an indication, the quickest lap times that we'd seen during the weekend or race weekends across the practice sessions before tonight, Will Devonish and Steve Bolger, 25.6 and a 25.7. So that's where the ultimate pace currently is. But Xeris is right in the game here. So too is this man, Greg Turra, flying the flag for Porsche.
Ooh. Definish's lap has gone. He's gone very deep in the hairpin.
Now we'll just cycle around and have a look at let's have a look and see who's sitting in the pits most season. Brenton Foley, you're right, he's in there. Lewis Wedding is also in the pits. Now, I've got a funny feeling that there was a bit of chat in the admin group before tonight that Wedding might have some sort of a penalty to serve. I'm trying to remember where that may have come about, if it actually did happen. He didn't take part in the Bathurst round. I think maybe something may have happened at Spielberg, but don't hold me to that. There was some sort of thing that said he may have a penalty to serve, but Foley, I don't think has a penalty hanging over his head at all.
There was that turn 3?
I'm looking at my notes. I'm looking at my notes from the Red Bull Ring, and he did have a crash with Devonish, but I don't remember if that ended up in any penalty.
No, I thought there was a redress as a part of that, so that's why I don't believe there was a penalty. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. Lewis, if you're watching along somewhere, he's actually said in the live chat, great track to start from the back. So maybe there isn't a penalty. Maybe he's just trying to put on a bit of a show.
Actually, I've just gone back in our Discord server in the stewards rulings, and yeah, Lewis Wedding did get a rear of grid penalty for tagging Will Devonish. Remember, where when Devonish had already completed his return from the rear of the grid, he got tagged again. That sent him all the way back down again. So that was on Lewis, and that is why Lewis is starting from the rear this evening.
All right, well, there we go. I was happy to be proven wrong, and thank you, Michael, for doing just that. That's why you're here, to surf through all those notes while I'm busy controlling all the broadcast cameras and who we look at and what we do. And then Bagsy likes to keep all his notes as well.
You've got to keep nice, thorough notes so I can go back and prove people wrong when they question my judgment.
How satisfying is it, though, to be like, hey, here's exactly what I've written down that proves you wrong, so
Well, it's all just sort of settled down for a little while here. So Xeris from Greg Turra, Devonish and Bolger, so the heavy hitters are in at the pointy end at the moment. They're separated by about 3.5 tenths, first to fourth. Then Ozrob. Now, didn't he have one hell of a Bathurst race? This guy was involved in just about everything. I think there was one, he was penalised for an incident at the top of the mountain. He was involved in the final corner collision with Luke Joyner when Joyner reversed on the track, and somehow or another he managed to finish on the lead lap. but hasn't he had a good return to form? He's only 6.5 tenths away from the pole lap at the minute, in pretty good position.
Yeah, those two gravel shed racing cars, Bolger and Osrob, really showing what they can do together, and showing the great work that the team lottery has done to bring guys like that together and help improve some of the slower guys in AMS Oz.
Yeah, we did say that the lottery was really going to throw up some interesting team combinations, and I did earmark start of the year that this gravel shed racing team was going to be the one that I liked the most. That it looked strong on paper, and at the moment that's proven to be correct. They are leading the team standings, and Steve Bolger, the head man in that team, is the man who's out in front in the driver's standings too.
Yeah, and being a very good figurehead for that team, you know, he's taking all the glory so far, but very consistent results from his teammates. Something else that's consistent, Xeris. He is 1,000th of a second up on his previous best lap time, which was a 125.667, a whole 3 tenths ahead, although he then cut the track at the chicane and is no longer doing that track, so he has consistently been inconsistent with that chicane.
Well done, Bagsy. Well done. Yeah, I was about to say, if he's 1,000 up, he's basically running the track like a metronome at the moment, but it's only got for one sector, and got to the second sector marker, made a little bit of a mess, and he'll go out and try again. He's got 4.5 minutes to get another lap in. He'll probably get at least another 2 or 3, depending on how quickly he gets out the track. Greg Tara's about to start another flying lap, so too Luke Joyner, and still it's Wedding and Foley, the only two men yet to set times. Brian Walsh is the last man that has set a time. Unfortunately for him, some time off the pace.
Foley didn't have a penalty, did he?
No, I don't think. I'm not sure whether he was keeping Lewis at the back in terms of company or not. Foley said before tonight, just with the practice he'd done, he felt that he was struggling. To give you an idea, the other Viper that's in the field is Cracker. He's P14 out of 22 cars at the moment. Foley said he was struggling to get out of the 127s. Now, 120
in the live chat.
127s on the table will put you somewhere between 7th and 12th right now, judging on the qualifying times. And also, he's also saying he's having some issues with his brake pedal by the looks of things as well.
Yeah, which is not ideal, because while the go-y part is handy, the stoppy part is the more important part of surviving.
Yeah, and there's quite a few hard stops here as well. So the 2 hairpins are definitely the hard stops, and you need the brakes coming down the hill as well, going into turn 4.
Something that we might be able to look into in a bit more detail during the warm-up session, but we can have a look at now as well. There's still 3 minutes left in qualifying. The pit exit and pit entrance are going to be very interesting today, because coming for the pit entrance, it's a bit easier because you're coming out of that slow hairpin, but some people might want to compromise their line into the hairpin to be able to cut across into that pit lane a bit faster, and they'll be very aggressive on pit entry because you won't have as much speed to wash off having gone straight through the corner. But the other thing is the pit exit is the more important part, feeds directly onto the racing line for the first corner, and those cars are going at high speed. I've already seen a couple close calls when following Xeris, as he's had to flash his lights at people who have, as he's been on a fast lap, pulled out of the pits or been wanting to. So it's going to be very important that people keep an eye out, and I'm sure it's going to be touched on in the driver's briefing, but there's the potential for some absolutely catastrophic accidents at that pit exit.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit of a difficult one to judge that pit lane exit. You have to be very much aware of the blue lights at the end of pit lane to tell you that there's traffic coming. And getting into pit lane will be the interesting part too, about whether or not people try and take the more natural line and then sweep into pit lane, or take a little bit of a tighter line through the final corner and peel into pit lane. Now, I believe it's also a slightly quicker pit lane speed limit tonight as well, so that'll be an interesting factor as well.
I'm just going to interrupt to say that we've got our second 25 of the evening. Steve Bolger jumps into 25 with a 9.70. So into second place for the Bulge. Still a few tenths away from Xeris, but he's going quicker again this lap.
Here he is on screen right now, and you're right, he's up by a little bit here. Not by much on the PB, but nearly a 1.5 tenths to Xeris at the minute. Xeris is lower as benchmark is a 25.6 to a 25.9. So Bolger's got a little bit of time to find, but the moment Xeris has the quickest time second quickest time so far. Only Devonish's 25.614 was quicker before tonight, so not much in it. But we're waiting to see now as the heavy hitters start to put some lap times in. Now, Greg Turra just jumped up as well. Devonish is coming around the final corner. Turra just shot up to P2. Devonish will set a lap time here, and it's going to be a 25 as well. Goes P2, knocks off Turra, only a half a tenth away from Xeris. He's going to have to go again. Now, Xeris on track. No, Xeris is in the pits. Turra's in the pits. They're not going to get another lap. Bolger will get across the line with just a few seconds remaining, I think.
Yes, Bolger might be the last one to get a lap because it will be because Devonish is on his final lap and he's up to the first sector again. So we'll keep eyes on Devonish. Bolger crossed the line with 10 seconds left. I'm not sure who else, if anyone, is going to cross the line to start their final lap. So we'll start to see, I think it will be Wayne Whitmore, and he just gets there at the death. So everyone is on their final lap now.
Yep. Noah Tara is just coming across the line now, and he stays put in P12. He'd actually jumped up as high as 10th at one stage, so he's done all right. The aforementioned Paul Morris down there in 19th, who we know is actually running, it's a pseudonym name, but we'll call him Paul Morris for the sake of tonight, is up. Devonish is up on the P1 time at the moment, a 10th and a 3rd to the good of Xeris. But it's all very, very critical, these last couple of corners. A bit wide at the Melbourne hairpin there, and a little bit slidey too. That might cost him pole position. It won't cost him a front row start, but it might very well cost him pole position unless he can really pick it up through these last few corners. You've got to stay off the curb there on the inside for the final corner at Goddard's. Is it a 25 to beat Xeris? No, it is not. Only man who can do it now is Bolger. As we look back here, now there's one of the Matt Harvey repair and tune cars off the road, but he's going to let Bolger go through. And I think Foley may have gotten out just to do an installation.
He's doing one lap and done for Foley.
And Foley's going to come across the line, and he's actually going to jump up to 12th. And Bolger can't get the job done either.
Very close from Bolger. He was actually up to that second sector mark, and then a slow third sector was enough to keep him from improving on his grid position. But at the end of the day, Xeris, cool as ice, maintaining pole position after sitting out the last 5 minutes of that session.
I think he actually tried a couple of times in the last few minutes to try and get another lap time in, but he just couldn't get a good enough run. We did see him cut the track a little bit later on, and he was a thousandth of a second up. But he had that pole position time wrapped up from about 7 minutes to go, I think. I don't think he actually he didn't relinquish, so he did just enough despite the advances of the Lamborghini through sectors 1 and 2. They just couldn't quite get it done through sector 3. That's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and if you look at the sector times, Xeris's last sector was a 33.8 compared to Devonish's 44.1 and Bolger's 33.9. So easily the final sector, the best sector for Xeris, and that's where he had the time over those two Lamborghinis, with Tara in the Porsche slotting in between the pair of them as well.
And Bolger getting into 4th in the 25s as well. So top 4 drivers, all in the 25s, and 3/10 between them. As we're hearing word on the chat that Foley appears to have fixed his pedal and made it up into 12th. So we'll see if he powers forward from mid-pack there.
Yeah, what was his time for 12th place? It was a 27, I think, just as the timing screen just dives away there. I think it was a mid-27.
I believe it might have been low 27s. I had a quick look at the camera across the line. I think he might have been about 1.7 seconds down on pole.
That's actually pretty respectable, I must say, just to get out there with not much time on the board and just set a lap time just to make to the grid. I mean, he would have started rear of grid, but I mean, starting sort of halfway up the grid could be perceived to be a bit better than starting from the rear, but there might be a few little incidents on the opening lap. It is a relatively interesting first corner that we're going to have to negotiate, but we'll see what happens. Now, what we'll do in this warm-up session while we have the driver's briefing and wait for a few things to get sorted is we'll take a little bit of a look back to something that Michael got very angry about in the last round, and he's giggling away because he knows precisely what this is all about. Those of you that watched the broadcast 2 weeks ago at Bathurst know that there was a plethora of safety cars, and one of them came out at a bit of an interesting time, and we thought that somebody was in a really good position to take advantage of this, and that somebody was Liam Spencer. So here is a little special feature just to show you exactly what happened and what unfolded at that particular time. So let's roll footage. So there's the broadcast as you see it. So Peter and Will Devonish. Up the top is Luke Joyner, who was the victim of this corner incident, and Liam Spencer in the bottom right. So Spencer's in the pit lane there. Here's the contact between John McDonald and Luke Joyner, which is happening while the leaders are going up Mountain Straight. Spencer's made it into pit lane now. Joyner collides with the other Lamborghini, and the safety car comes out. So literally, Liam Spencer was in the right place at the right time, made a call that was very, very, bold at the time, completely unoblivious to what was going on. And here he comes down the main straight. The whole field's in pit lane under the safety car. Now, he came out in that particular situation, third place overall on the road. However, what has been determined happened is that with where the finish line is positioned in pit lane, it has cost him the position. So if we go back to the feature again, we'll run this here. Keep an eye on the bottom right-hand corner there, where Liam Spencer is. So as he comes into pit lane, that's all fine. Goes through the little dog leg S that's on the screen here, and then gets to the line. Now there's where the start-finish line is there on the bottom of your screen. It also mirrors in the pit lane. So he's crossed the line to start that particular lap there. He is classified as being on the same lap as the leaders in 10th place. But then the following lap, when it all unravels again, he ends up being shuffled all the way back down the order to, I think, about 14th, gents, in what we must say was an absolute travesty and probably shouldn't have happened.
He got robbed. He got absolutely robbed. Unfortunately, that is just one of the functions of how Automobilista does safety cars, I think. So it takes the positions under safety car based on the lap that it starts. So where the position at the control line. And as Nether mentioned, because all those pit bays are beyond the control line, they're still scored as being ahead of Liam Spencer, where in reality, had the control line, say, been at the end of pit lane, Liam would have been where he should have rightfully been, in my opinion, in third place. So it is just one of those functions of the game that really just ruined what was an absolute masterstroke from Liam Spencer to get into the pits when he did. And yeah, as you may recall from the broadcast 2 weeks ago, I was extremely ropeable with how that all happened, because I was so happy that someone had actually done that and gotten it to work. But yeah, unfortunately, the game had other ideas.
Yeah, it's one of those things where after seeing so many people disagree with your pit strategy, to see someone finally do it and then get punished for it would be quite grating, to say the least. And it did rob us of a bit of a difference. It was still a very good race, but a bit of a difference at the end of that race in terms of people have had to pass him, and it was doing quite that. That was quite a big reward for that risk that was taken. So it was a bit of luck as well, to be sure, but then it was immediately eclipsed by the horrible bad luck. And as you said, it's unfortunately one of those limits of the simulation that we have here. But what can you do? Hopefully, and I'm not sure if it's been discussed fully, but potentially having people being instructed to ignore specific things if it happens and being fixed by live stewards. But that's probably something for next season, maybe, rather than the current races.
Yeah, it is something that has been talked about very, very briefly post-race, and we were fortunate enough to have Mike Coulston jump in as the live steward last round, because we knew that with the way the Bathurst pit lane actually is and the safety car situation, you could potentially have been in a position where you would have been ahead of the safety car in the game, giving you a penalty had that coming into the pit lane situation occurred. And the steward was there to remove penalties. But that being said, Mike did a fantastic job of reviewing all the incidents that happened live in a 2-hour race, got to all of them pretty darn quickly, issued out the penalties that were necessary, which meant we didn't have to have a post-race review of all the penalties. But unfortunately, that one that happened to Liam Spencer is just something we couldn't react to quick enough, because we needed to spend the time to unravel what had happened. And by the time we did that, we were going back to green flag racing, so we had to put the cap on it and say, well, we're doing it after the fact. There's not much that could be done. But that being said, that does mean there is the option of some live stewards reviewing it and then basically telling the field to ignore everything that happens. You know, you have to basically be following a car and it tells you you need to follow this car at the restart. The life steward would have to go into the group and say, you are to disobey what the game is telling you. We will clear your penalty when we go back to green flag racing. But then there might actually be a slew of other penalties for other cars not following the cars that they should be behind. So there could be a bit of stuff to clear, but he does have 3 laps to get those penalties rectified before they come in and serve them. But it is an unfortunate thing. It's just something that's buried bales in the deep of the way that track has been designed. So I mean, on behalf of the group, just apologies to Liam. It shouldn't have happened. It's something that looks like it's been out of our control. But the important thing is, as a group, we've learned from it, and we can put some stuff in place to hopefully avoid it happening again. We can't change the race result, but at least we understand what went wrong now.
And what we also understand is that Liam knows how to make a strategy.
And that's the thing too. That was not an impromptu pit stop. To me, judging by the timer that was there, that was actually planned. So he didn't react to the situation that was going on in front, because the collision between John McDonald and Luke Joyner happened about 3 or 4 seconds after he'd already committed to pit lane. So he was planning to come in, so he'd obviously worked it out in his head. I can stop here and I can get to the flag. He just caught lucky with the safety car and, well, in all right mind, should have been in 3rd place behind, was it Brendan Ross and Matt Schwass, who were the only other 2 cars that stayed out.
Yeah, and maybe if that safety car had come out a lap after, so it had given a chance for him to sort of catch up to the field before it had all panned out, maybe it would have been different. But unfortunately, we shall never know. Yeah, it's just unfortunately one of those things, which is a real shame. And hopefully, yeah, as you said, we've learned from it, and we can possibly put in a fix or work out a way to fix something like that for the future.
Yep, completely agree. Bagsy, closing thoughts, I guess, on that Bathurst race, while we've got a little bit of time up our sleeve, as the warm-up has just been extended by a couple of minutes for some people to fix some issues. I think they're still having the driver's briefing as well. A bit of a chaotic race, but Lamborghini and Will Devonish was really the class of that field in that particular one 2 weeks ago.
He really was, and it was hard to come up with enough superlatives to describe his driving throughout practice, qualifying, and the race. You know, pole, podium, wasn't fastest in practice, but honestly, it didn't matter. Every single one of the laps he did in the qualifying session were enough for pole position, and he did 5, I believe. They were all faster, and they just kept getting faster. It was ridiculous. It honestly was ridiculous. It looks like the field's caught up to him a little bit today, and that's to our gain, because we'll actually be able to see him battling with people instead of just constantly driving away at the front. Yeah,
that's going to be the key, I think, tonight. Is he's going to start out of the second row, so he's going to have his work cut out for him. First row. Second place is where he was, not second row, second place. But he's going to have his work cut out for him with some very quick cars alongside him. But it also doesn't end there. I know he wanted to get Bathurst under his belt, especially after what happened to him last year in Supercars, where he not only threw away his qualifying lap in the shootout, but he threw the car away at the top of the mountain on lap 1 and was gone in a race that he was really sort of in the ballpark to challenge Brenton Foley for. But we have a look to the GT3 calendar. After tonight, there are still 4 rounds to go and a couple of unknowns. So there's still some challenges that lie ahead for the likes of Will Devonish, Steve Bolger, and the rest of the GT3 crew. It's not over yet. So Donington tonight stop. Valencia, Circuit Ricardo Tormo, that's the next stop in 2 weeks' time. The MotoGP circuit always throws up some unique challenges. Then we've got Shanghai, which we would like to see a good field for Shanghai. I know some people don't like the circuit, but the last time we raced there, I think Bagsy, you and I saw about 7 or 8 cars take to that track. It wasn't a pretty picture, but we've had some really good numbers this year. Monza, the site of everything that has gone wrong in AMS Oz endurance racing over the course of time. There always seems to be something happen at Monza. And then the big one, which I sort of give to a little bit of a nod to Xeris in this one, because we've run this circuit in the same configuration we're going to run it in back in ARW DRMs, and that's Watkins Glen.
Watkins Glen's a sort of almost feels like a bit of an out there track compared to some of the rest of them. I am looking forward to Valencia as well. It's for a second I'd forgotten. I thought you were talking about the Valencia street circuit. And I was wondering who in their right mind would have ported that into a racing game. But the Circuit Ricardo Tormo, usually MotoGP. Looking forward to that one.
It's not a circuit you associate with GT3 racing, really, is it, Michael? As we said, it's mostly the MotoGP circuit finale that we see at the end of every year. But I have had a look at the GT3 cars going around here. It's going to be unique. It's in a similar vein to this circuit where there's a little bit of undulation that could catch a few people out, a few tricky corners. It's going to be something we've never seen before.
Yeah, and you're right. Really, when I hear Valencia, when I hear Circuit Automo, I think bikes. So I don't think I've ever actually seen a car race at that Valencia circuit. So it will certainly throw up a few challenges. I don't think because the lines that you would take on a bike or that you would see for bike racing don't really translate to car racing, because the way that you have to position it to get through corners. And then the other three tracks are all really GT endurance stalwarts. Shanghai, they have a WEC round, Asian Le Mans Series round. Monza is where they do some of the testing for the WEC and prototypes. And then of course the Blank Pan Endurance Series, the SO Endurance Series, has their season opener there. And Watkins Glen, of course, the famous 6-hour race for the American Le Mans Series, which is now the the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship for Watkins Glen. So these are big GT3 tracks, whereas Valencia is going to be an interesting challenge. I can't wait to see it. Really, it is a really good circuit, and one I think, as we've mentioned about tonight at Donington, one that's really underrated in the world of racing. So yeah, it should be again very interesting little spectacle.
It's a little bit similar to Eastern Creek as well, with the first corner, first and second corners. In fact, the whole layout, they sort of, if you flipped them around and put them on top of each other, they look almost like someone's copied someone else's homework in terms of making a track, but just change it enough so they don't know that you copied me.
Yeah, it's got a lot of those little elements as well. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, there's a few weird hairpins. I think the one part of the Valencia circuit that I like the most is going into the final corner. You come around the left hand, it's like a sweeping left hand bend, and then you've got to hit the brakes, and the circuit is still turning a little bit before it sort of gets to that 90-degree corner where you need to spot the apex and slice across it beautifully, and then take the line off the corner on the far right hand side, which leads you down the front straightaway. It is one of the trickiest corners on the circuit to get right, but it's oh so critical into not only finishing the lap but starting the lap as well. It's not like you can just simply take a wide line, like aboard a lap, and take a wide line through the final corner and try and maximize your front straightaway speed going into turn one. There's no room to do anything like that. So you've got to, run the circuit or that part of the corner the same way every single time, lap after lap. There's no give at that corner.
And on top of that as well, the track is dropping away from you as well. Always that beautiful challenge with dealing with undulation as well. So yeah, really, and that's really the only long straight on the track as well. So a lot of big factors in that final complex of corners to really put a lap together. And that's why it's produced so many good races in MotoGP, so many good championship defining races as the final race of the season at that circuit. So yeah, it should be a very interesting challenge for these GT3 cars when we get to it in 2 weeks' time.
Now we just need Formula One to go to a circuit that good for its finale as well.
Well, I mean, it is in Spain. Why don't we sub this one out for the Spain Grand Prix? It would be a better job than Barcelona. I say that, no.
The thing is, who knows? It's one of those. It's hard to tell what cars will be good at what tracks.
Yeah.
You often heard about. I can't recall the name of the MotoGP track in the Netherlands.
Assen.
GT.
Assen. That's why you often hear about Assen being potentially used for an F1 race, but it probably the things that have to change for F1 might ruin the GP circuit.
Oh,
and
yeah.
We often see if a track isn't surfaced quite right, like Silverstone, and then F1 goes through, and then MotoGP just can't even race there.
Yeah, it's It's almost as if F1 is a blight on motorsports, isn't it? It feels that way sometimes with the way that tracks sort of get built and homogenized to fit into the sort of F1 cookie cutter that they've built. You know, the 5.2 to 5.7 kilometer track with these sectors with heaps of runoff and everything. So yeah, you'd hate to see a track with so much history in another aspect in MotoGP be sort of bastardized to fit the cookie cutter. Yeah, good call, actually.
And that's probably the best way to describe it, isn't it? A lot of the circuits these days, of course, have been Tilke designed, and they are a cookie cutter to a degree. They have similar type corners and similar type situations. Oh, and there's a bit of pit lane practice going on, and that's good evasive action from Brendan Ross there as he negotiates the pit lane from Noah Turra. But you're right, circuits like the one we're at tonight definitely don't fit that mould. They're of that old school type of era where they've had to go through a plethora of changes to meet the FIA grading standards and that over the course of time. But all these new circuits that just come along, your Shanghai, what was the other one that's there? The Malaysian circuit, Sepang. All those types of circuits have got those same sort of characteristics, and as Bagsy said, it's like copying somebody's homework for some of those tracks. They look interesting on paper, but then they just present the same type of racing over and over again.
That being said, I will vigorously defend Malaysia to the death as a very good Formula One track.
That was probably the best one, I think. Like the one I missed the most is actually Istanbul.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Oh yeah, that's a glorious track.
And that's not to say that the cookie cutter is inherently bad or it can't produce good tracks which feature great racing. It's just that it does eventually feel a little samey. I think is the way you'd put it. It, as Nether said,
India is probably a good example.
Yeah,
India's probably a good example of something that went a bit wrong in that regard.
Yeah, India, Korea as well, maybe.
I'd say it's a good point because it's just here's the two overtaking zones, and now you follow each other for 2 sectors. Back to the 2 overtaking zones. Oh, you can get overtake done. Well, enjoy following.
Yeah,
and it's not. It felt like someone just took 2 track ideas and put it together.
Well, putting two and two together is what some of these drivers are doing right now, just with putting their pit stop practice in. But their practice is about to be cut short because the clock now goes 0, and this will be the last little bit of time, probably the last 30 or so seconds before the server will kick over to the race session, and we get 90 minutes of running for tonight. So a little bit later than usual. We were having a bit of I was actually looking at the timer and I was a little bit worried that we'd reset the warm-up session twice. Probably some few people having some dramas getting a few things sorted. As here we go, we are about to go to race session. Just going to check on a couple of things while we get ready to go here. And Brendan Ross just confirming for me in the chat that the driver's briefing did go a little bit longer than expected. And they only kicked over to practice probably about 4 minutes ago, so that's why they restarted the thing twice.
All good. Gave us more time to have a nice little chat about racetracks, didn't it?
It gave us a lot of time to fill some things in. Engine starting to fire. There's Will Devonish on P2, and the field slowly making their way to the grid. Here we go. Just 1 or 2 more cars left to make it. Oh, someone's just dived off there. That was Liam Spencer. And the last of the Lamborghinis, I think, is in. I think we've got a full grid here now, gentlemen.
And what a pretty grid it is as well.
Yeah, probably one of the best looking grids I think we've seen in many, many races over the course of time with AMS Oz. As the formation lap gets underway, and we'll give the reins to Bagsy for a run through of this grid.
Thank you, Nether, as they peel off behind the safety car. Xeris on pole position, I believe his first pole of the season. Will Devonish in second with his at least 3rd front row start in a row. He's got a knack for qualifying and driving that Lamborghini. Greg Turra in 3rd for Lone Cub Racing, first Porsche so far. Now we've got a triple threat of Steve Bolger, Ozrob and Matt Schwass for Gravel Shed Racing in 4th, 5th and 6th. So a bit of a blue wave early in the field. Brendan Ross in the Bentley in 7th. Luke Joyner for Wedding Crashers Motorsport in 8th, followed by Aaron Thomas, Matt Harvey Repair and Tune. Liam Spencer in, once again, the guest Gran Turismo GTR. Liam Mitch in 11th, followed by Brenton Foley, managed 12th with his only qualifying lap. Wayne Spencer in the Ferrari is in 13th, followed by Wayne Whitmore. We'll be able to tell him to play a little bit easier today, which is nice. Heath Dixon managed 15th after being a little bit off the pace during practice. He pulled it together during qualifying and jumped about 7 positions near the end. Gary Neville for Wedding Crashers Motorsport in 16th. Paul Morris, which is Billy Dougal Salonga, I believe, is in 17th. So we'll probably just refer to him as Paul Morris unless we remember. Brian Walsh in 18th. Noah Tara in 19th. Fairway down compared to what we'd usually expect for him. Cracker is in 20th. Chomo in 21st. And the rear of the field, Lewis Wedding.
Geez, Termo being right down the back of the field's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he actually set a competitive lap in qualifying. I'll just have a quick look at that.
Yeah.
I guess he's hoping mostly that he doesn't get hit by anyone this week. I feel like if he manages to get through the race without being collected in someone else's accident, that'll come through as a win for him.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there was something else that happened between the driver's briefing and and the race session that may have concerned Noah Tara as well, because I think at one stage I recall him being up there in about 13th or so place. Now, they've got to get themselves sorted real quick here. There's meant to be a 2x2 restart. Maybe there might be something on the cards about it being a single file, but I think Xeris is meant to be a bit further over. But nonetheless, green flag is out, and 90 minutes have commenced, and looks pretty good so far. Devonish and Xeris just starting to clear away a little bit at the front. Tara having to fend off a trio, as Bagsy mentioned, of these Lamborghinis, although one of them's gone very, very wide. That's the 555 Osrob. So he's gone wide at the first corner and is going to be slightly compromised down the hill. He's under threat from Brendan Ross here. There's 2x2 a bit further back. Rossi's just going to have to fall into line for the minute. Looks like Wayne Spencer is making a move back there on Brenton Foley, but Foley holds on around the outside.
Cracking start from the first few guys, but yeah, Osrob really acted as a bit of the cork in the bottle after he went off the track, and it's a bit of a mess further back, not in terms of people going off or going wide, but there's just an absolute armada of cars coming through turns 7 and 8 at the moment. It's difficult to really get your bearings as everyone tries to file through and gets their own little bit of space, but it seems to be mostly clean as we hit the second sector mark for this first lap in our 90-minute hit out this evening.
Foley having... I was about to say, Foley was having a bit of a look at the BMW ahead of, I think it was Liam Mitch, but then there was a bit of a BMW getting to BMW, and one of the...
Liam Mitch into Thomas into Joyner.
Yep, and
so
then Joyner was
lost
around.
every single place as an entirely innocent party there. That's horrible.
Yep, Wayne Whitmore tried to make a move on Wayne Spencer, and Spencer just gives him the over and under treatment of the hairpin and says, "Thank you very much, I'll have my place back." Yeah, the two Matt Harvey repair and tune teammates getting into each other. Or Foley wide at the final corner. That's going to leave an opening for the Ferrari of Wayne Spencer to have a go down the main straight, but he's on the wrong side. Foley can just hold him high and wide here through Redgate at turn 1, and in actual fact, Wayne Spencer just decides to release the pedal and just fall in behind, which is something we were teaching a number of the rookies and a number of the seasoned drivers even last Friday. Just a little bit of racecraft in terms of how to follow each other properly. If you're not in a position to make a pass, just, release and fall back into line and have another go somewhere along the line. And that's precisely what Spencer did on that occasion, so that's really good to see.
But you're happy with seeing all your hard teaching work getting put into action immediately in the next race? That must feel really good.
Oh, apart from the running into the back of people that happened down at the chicane, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's actually been a pretty clean start, to be honest with you, and there was some redressing of position happening down the field, so it's good to see that some of the stuff's been taken on board. There's just been a little bit of a slip in the driving standards across a lot of series over the last couple of weeks, and we just wanted to try and right that a little bit.
What we're about to see potentially is Osrob taking his place back from Matt Schwass into the penultimate hairpin. And it looks like he's just driven right up the inside of him there quite well. So with that, we are now, the top 7 are as they started. Osrob rectifying his mistake from the first lap with a very nice pass on Matt Schwass there.
Yeah, locking a break there into the final corner as well, but I almost feel like Matt Schwass just possibly gave that position back to him by running wide at the hairpin too, and pretty much just opened the door for Osrob to go through. But they're in the same Discord, they're teammates. They'll try and work together and catch up to the back of Steve Bolger, and then they can start a bit of an assault on the back of Greg Turra's Porsche.
We're going to go 3 wide into turn 1, it looks like, between 12th, 13th, and 14th. Noah Turra, Heath Dixon, and Aaron Thomas. Turra ends up running wide and gave away all 3 of those positions now, which has moved Dixon up 2 spots from where he started into 13th. And Noah Turra, actually, great start, as we've got a yellow flag just ahead of them.
Yeah,
it's Will Devonish. Will Devonish is off the track.
Uh-oh, that's big news for Will Devonish. What's going on here? Let's try and pick him up. There he is. He's gone to the back of the field. So he was just starting to lose a little bit of touch with Xeris. Oh, he's actually hit the wall. We have to rewind this back a little bit. This has happened some time ago. Is it turn 4? Yeah, it is. It's turn 4. So he's taken a fair bit. Oh, he took a lot of curb on the inside of 4, got on the grass, and oh, that's a bit of a heavy whack as well. There's going to be some serious damage on that car too. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of suspension damage after that.
Yeah, that's a big hit for Devonish, not only in this race, but also for his title chances as well. Remember, we're already halfway through the season, and he's lost a little bit of ground to Steve Bolger.
Noah Turra's just made a mistake too. Sorry to cut you off there, Michael. Noah Turra just made a mistake at the chicane. I'll see if I can pick this one up too. Yes, we have actually got it. So here we go. There was a little bit of chaos ahead, and he actually got a serve. He got a serve from Lime Mitch. So immediately I'm praising the drivers for, on one hand, I'm praising them for their good driving standards. Then again, it just looks like it's gone completely out the window. And there might actually be a little bit of a case to answer, I think, for Lime Mitch after that one's done. I suspect that one will end up in the steward's review.
Bringing us back onto the racetrack, there's a bit of a battle going on between Brendan Ross and Matt Schwass for 5th place, and Ross boxing the Lamborghini out coming up the hill, which has actually caused Schwass to lose a lot of time and fall into the clutches of Liam Spencer for 7th place as well. So this little trio of different cars is working each other over very nicely, in fact, and at the moment it is Brendan Ross taking the ascendancy.
And on top of that as well, Bagsy, that Steve Bolger's managed to slip past Greg Turra somewhere on the circuit as well. That's only just happened in the last sort of 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, he's got right up there. I've unfortunately missed the last couple of minutes as my game just crashed to desktop, which was very unfortunate. What I did see right as I came back in was Lewis Wedding getting past 3 people at once, I believe, going through the hairpin, this penultimate hairpin rather, and I guess just taking advantage of the large battle that's happening further back down the pack between Heath Dixon, Lime Mitch, Turmo, Gary Neville. There's just a big pack of cars here with Wayne Whitmore leading them.
Yeah, big angry mid-pack right now. You're right, it's from this group of 3s. Brendan Ross, Matt Schwass, and Liam Spencer's cottoned onto that tail as well. Then you got Paul Morris right down. There's a lot going on in the mid-pack as well. Brendan Ross has managed to kick away, though. But look at this. Liam Spencer is staying with probably one of the drivers who we've had in AMS Oz for a while, and Matt Schwass, giving him the real hurry up here in this Nissan.
Yeah, I think he heard about. He's taken that disappointment from Bathurst and really trying to channel that into something a bit more positive. Is Liam Spencer, and he's doing quite a good job as well in that Nissan GTR GT3 spec machinery in the guest car. Great looking car, by the way. That's traditionally a bit more strong in a straight line, so to see it working so well around a track like Donington is really encouraging for Spencer as we head towards the second half of the season.
He's got a very, very experienced man bearing down on him right now, though, in Brenton Foley, who's just slowly starting to chip a 10th or 2 here or there out of Spencer's time. Won't be long before he's mixing it up here for 7th place, and Brendan Ross has just had a little bit of a moment. I think he's just lost some of his advantage over this pairing. And here comes that SRT Viper. So let's have a look at Foley's times. Last time around, he was about, was it last lap? There it is there. So he was actually a lot quicker than these two. But mind you, Matt Schwass did make a mistake, got boxed out by Brendan Ross. So that's why he did a lap time in the 31s. But Foley is slowly coming.
If we go back to 15th, we've got Will Devonish, who's just cut through about 6 cars in 3 corners. He's absolutely on it.
There he goes.
This ridiculous pack from around the outside of Turmo from 13th down. These guys have not moved apart from each other in a good 3 laps.
He's really got to be careful now, Will Devonish, because he's now, once he clears Wayne Whitmore, which he can't do it right there. Wayne's parked his car absolutely perfectly on the apex. And the next passing opportunity, this is really not supposed to be a passing opportunity, but Devonish sticks his nose in there. Oh, that's ball going through Schwantz and up to McLean's.
I think Devonish needs to attend your driver standards briefing from last week if he's trying moves like that.
No, he didn't. He didn't. But he's got the job done at Coppice now. And Termo's going to say thank you very much. He's just seen Wayne Whitmore get moved aside, but then he couldn't get it done. He got it too much grass, and he's going to lose the spot to Lime Mitch. So he tried to take advantage of the right thing and did the right thing there, did Termo, but he just couldn't
Gary
get it done.
Neville had a very close shave with the back of Termo there. I don't think he was expecting him to hit the brakes so early, and luckily dived out the way as well. But
that's what happens.
This Wedding's disturbed this pack a little bit as well, and so they're just going absolutely.
Oh, there's a move! There's a move! Cracker's gone, and Joyner's got into him. Okay, that's a day late and $1 short from Cracker there. He came from a long way back and tried to make a couple of positions under brakes. Now here it is again. This is precisely what we were worried about. You get this really big pack of cars, and something's about to go wrong, and it usually does. So Cracker just little bit too late on the brakes there, and in actual fact Joyner's lost a spot to Dixon, and Cracker's lost a ton of spots there. So something just a little bit overzealous on the brakes, and just needed to just pare it back a touch. That being said, at least we haven't had a safety car just yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Let's not jinx it.
No, let's please not jinx it. So, Cracker's gone to the back of the field, and where's Will Devonish all of this? So he's now cleared that little battle pack, and he has moved ahead. Now, Noah Turra's now having a move on Wayne Whitmore as well. That's a very brave move into Coppice, and very well done, actually, from Noah Turra.
Just a few other things that we've missed while heading through those replays. There was a little bit of a contact between Liam Spencer and Brenton Foley, which spun Foley around, and Spencer redressed that position, but I can't actually find where Foley is at the moment. He's down.
Foley might have had another issue because he's down in 12th.
Yeah, so I have to keep an eye on that. And in fact, Liam Spencer just goes very, very deep at the last corner rather, and will drop in just ahead of Foley and Billy Douglas-Salonga for those two positions.
Lost a place to Aaron Thomas in doing that as well.
And just quickly,
a little bit further, go on.
Also, just at the head of the field, Greg Turra got passed by Ozrob, so it is now a Gravel Shed Racing 2-3 with Turra in the Porsche in 4th place.
If I can direct the director's attention to 8th place Lewis Wedding, who is up now 14 positions. He is all over the back of Wayne Spencer and looking very, very racy, and only a safety car away from being in contention with this win potentially.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, Bagsy. This is only a matter of time, I think, before Wedding gets the job done. Maybe starting from the back of the grid wasn't as silly as we first thought.
Well, the thing is, though, we've not seen the best of Lewis Wedding this season, and if we're seeing it now in this race where he's come up now, a little bit of a tap there on Spencer. Spencer didn't really want to give that away.
No, he fought that one very hard.
Yeah, seeing it now, when he started from the back of the grid, that's not really played into his hands. You want to have those good races where you're, right at the front and able to control things, not when you're from the back and trying to overtake the entire field to get where you need to be, as we see consecutive fastest laps from first Xeris and then Steve Bolger in 2nd place as they cross the line.
I've got to say, Wayne Spencer's doing a sterling job of defending from Wedding here. Wedding's been slaying all comers, basically, and he's kept him behind him for a full lap at least now. So very well driven and not too aggressive, maybe a little bit aggressive going into the chicane, but for the most part, very good defensive driving from Wayne Spencer.
Yeah, very fair, and through the chicane, it took 2 to tango there. Wedding was trying to make the move. Spencer tried to fight it. Wedding realised the gig was up at the very last second, pulled out. And this is what we like to see, the Pro-Am guys or the Silver Cup drivers mixing it up really, really well with the Gold Class drivers, although Wedding's trying to position himself on the right spot here and thinking...
But it's when you get to the top of the circuit there, it compromises your line to that corner. It makes it very difficult to get past, and so he's had to back out. But Wayne holding his nerve despite having Lewis Wedding alongside him for so long, and Wedding's going to try again into the chicane.
He's done a great job, Spencer, because he had no right to defend into turn 6 there. And Wedding's gone very deep under brakes to try and wrap him around the outside, but he's not going to be able to do it there either. Spencer's putting on a great defensive effort here, and the best part about it, he's not actually doing anything over the top. It's just...
So it's bringing Aaron Thomas is coming into this now. Liam Spencer's there, and Will Devonish has caught up to this as well. Wedding's losing seconds a lap behind Wayne Spencer, and it's really costing him time that is going to be very important later. He's just trying to throw it around the outside of the hairpin, and that's going to compromise his line and invite him to be attacked by Wayne Spencer into the first corner. Although he's able to get the power down here, but these are some excellent defensive drive from Wayne Spencer, and really, the fact that it's a credit to him so far. I hope to not put the commentator's curse on him, but it's been some really nice drive. This is the sort of driving that you would display in a PowerPoint of how to drive defensively and sensibly.
And it's an absolute it absolutely typifies what you would see in normal GT3 racing as well. You know, these two cars driven by what we would have a silver and a gold rated driver in this series. One in probably the pro class, one in an AM class, in different strategies. And it's Wedding tries to inside at Coppers.
Yep, got it done.
Yeah, very, very well done there. And it was because Spencer just ran a little wide on exit and Lewis was able to get through. But all in all, a very, very good defensive drive from Spencer so far. And yeah, kept Lewis Wedding behind for at least 2 laps, which is an achievement in itself.
Well, he's going to have to do that to Will Devonish very soon, though, too, as well. Sorry, Bags. He's going to have to do that to Will Devonish because Devonish has just dispatched Liam Spencer rather quickly in all of this. And then Aaron Thomas is going to have a little bit of a go here on Wayne Spencer. He's going to try and do what Spencer did to him. And look at the different lines that a lot of drivers are taking at the final corner as well.
Aaron Thomas is about to find out it doesn't take a simple mistake from Wayne Spencer into a hairpin doesn't mean he's got any chance of getting through straight away.
No,
I think the thing with Wedding there is he learnt from the last 2 laps and saw that going alongside as Thomas gets into the back of Spencer, he's compromised himself now. So Devonish is going to get past potentially. Devonish is going to try Lewis Wedding's trick of going side by side all the way through this, and Thomas has decided to back off a little bit there. So now is Devonish versus Spencer. But yeah, Wedding just stayed behind him coming up to the far end of the circuit instead of compromising his line through the corner, and meant he was able to get through late at the next corner rather than just have Spencer out drag into the corner, as Devonish looks to repeat the move Wedding just did on Spencer, but Spencer closes the door.
Here we go. The defensive driving is happening all over again. Will I just saw how much harder Will drove the car into turn 4 relative to Wayne Spencer, and the amount of gap that he lopped off the distance between the two cars is absolutely mega. Now, Will's going to be very, very good on the brake stand here if he gets a good exit, and it's not bad, but he's just not quite close enough here. Oh, Liam Spencer's got into the back of Aaron Thomas there, but is it around? No, so it hasn't gone around, but that's compromised them in terms of putting them back towards Brenton Foley. Now, here's this whole argument of the different lines that everybody drives through the corner. Spencer with the defensive sort of straighter line toward the apex of the final corner, with Devonish taking the more traditional line, which you don't sort of peg it right down on the apex through the final corner. You need to sort of sit off it a little bit just to play with the camber of the road a bit. Devonish gets such a good run off the final corner. Spencer runs him right to the grass, and he was in front. Devonish had to get his foot out of it very, very quickly. Have a look at the difference here.
Devonish's brilliant strategy and brilliant setup, and ability to get the power down, coming back to bite him here, because some people just aren't able to quite get that acceleration, and it's almost catching him out. He's got to be careful he doesn't run into the back of someone who's a little bit slower than him as he's making his way back through the field. Yeah. But once again, we saw that he compromised his line, and so now he's not going to get the pass done here. He needs to just be patient, like Wayne did. I mean, it's going to take a couple laps to learn. Wayne Spencer's driving defensively very well, so really just got to be a bit patient and pick your battles.
And it looks like he's trying to angle it down towards the chicane. Not gonna happen there. It's almost the curse of getting too close to the car in front of you. I keep saying that.
He's got to overlap now. He's going to get the job done. He's going to get it done at the final corner. Sorry, the second to last corner. So here he goes. He's got the position and the high ground here. He can just afford to open the steering a bit, but he didn't really need to do it there, actually, because Spencer just took a little bit too much accelerator and ran wide, understeered wide. If Devonish really needed to run side by side, one of the tricks there is open steering up a little bit, make your opponent open his steering up so you can get a much better and smoother exit off the corner and out-drag your opponent to the next one. So the next target for Will Devonish, Lewis Wedding.
we should see the pair of them start to eat into the gap of Brendan Ross, which is the next car up the road, and then Matt Schwass, who is on the tail of Greg Tara. So Greg Tara is going to be in contention with the third of the Gravel Shed Racing Lamborghinis very shortly, as Ross just joins them. And we're only about 10 minutes away from what should be the first round of pit stops as well. So it'll be interesting to see how people cope with the pit strategy here, and how the race breaks up as well as we enter what will be the first of 2 stops for the evening.
Something that's going to be very interesting with those pit stops is, so far we've seen very little field spread compared to some of the other races we see. Brian Walsh, the only person a lap down so far, but Wayne Whitmore is currently just over a minute down on Xeris and is in 21st place. Everyone else is between he and Xeris, obviously. So if Xeris were to pit right now, he would come out in second to last place, apart from Brian Walsh, who is lapped. So yeah, the field is nowhere near as wide in terms of time differences. So pit stop timing is going to be super important, because if you come out in traffic, that's going to slow you up. We saw how much it slowed up. If we look at the gap between Devonish and Wedding at the moment, it was because of the fact that Wedding got past, and then Devonish had to spend 2 laps behind Wayne Spencer.
And looking at the lap times too, from Lewis Wedding back to Will Devonish, the last time around, which is where Wedding did have to get past Wayne Spencer, there was a difference in the lap time of quite a margin actually. Wedding had done a 27.2 and he's just done another 27.2. Devonish did a 28.7, having to battle with Spencer. And Devonish now done a 26.8 on the previous tour. So that's a huge chunk of time that Devonish is now starting to gain back on Lewis Wedding, but he's got an awful long way to go to get all the way back to the head of the field. He's going to need, pit strategy to come into play here. Now, Matt Schwass has just gone deep at the hairpin. We're just watching this battle for 4th, 5th and 6th as Bolger pumps in a 26.290 to take the new fastest lap. Brendan Ross managed to get up the inside of Matt Schwass, but he's just going to try and got out-dragged to the final corner, and now he's got to settle back into what is 6th place right now. So he's going to have a stab at the first corner. He's thinking about it. Not on this occasion.
This has been an intriguing battle from the pair of them. Neither are really getting into each other, very close or anything, but it's just been a very nice little back and forth, little tug here, and a little, as they both almost get the swap on going around Brian Walsh at the bottom of the hill. It's just every lap, it's just a 10th here or a 10th there that they're taking off of each other. And yeah, really intriguing stuff as we see Will Devonish set a 26.26 to set the fastest lap of the race at the moment. Fastest man on the track for the last 2 laps running is Will Devonish, so he's motoring his way back into this race.
Speaking of someone who's not motoring their way back into the race, Liam Spencer, it looks like he's just retired from this one. Looks like that's an internet disconnect or some sort of mechanical failure or off-track excursion, but he becomes our first retirement for this one, having just popped up on the bottom screen and dropped to that. But unfortunate for the young gun, he was looking the goods for a little while.
Looks like he came out of the final corner, got onto the grass, and then spun it into the pit wall. Not that big a tag of the wall, but after a few indiscretions when it comes to off-track excursions, I think Liam's just had a bit of a frustrating night so far, unfortunately.
Yeah, probably the right way to sum that one up, I think. Yeah, a bit of frustration, but also, his father's out there flying the flag. Has done a pretty good job for the Spencer household of, showing what you can do when you get your elbows out a little bit and fairly and squarely with all the other drivers around you. These 2 men are on the screen at the moment, are the 2 we diced with for a little bit, Will Devonish and Lewis Wedding, and this gap is starting to come down pretty quickly now. Last lap for Devonish, you could see there on the screen. Our live timing is just a little bit slow to respond, but this gap is continuing to come down. There it is. Look again, another huge chunk of time taken out, about 2 or 3 tenths on that particular sector alone. So it won't be too much longer before we have a nice little battle on our hands to have a bit of a chat about here between 2 of the heavy hitters of Automobilista Australia. Meanwhile, at the head of the field, we're going to give our leader a little bit of airtime. He's done pretty well. He's sort of kept up the margin to about 4 seconds or so. It's just started to slip a little bit in the back end of this stint. And his lap time, nothing to be slashed about there. That's actually his quickest lap of the race. It's a 26.5. We go back to Bolger, just done a 26.8. So in actual fact, he made a net gain of 0.3 on that lap, Xerus.
And the interesting thing about Xerus's pace is that he's really winding into it. He's been one of the guys that gets quicker the more laps he does. So on the last 4 laps, he's set his fastest lap of the race each time. Oh, actually, no, that's a lie. Earlier on, he had a 26.6. The point being that the last few laps, 27 flat, 26.7, 25, 26.5, 26.5, he's really winding into that pace now, and he's just metronomic at the moment. He's got clear air ahead of him, a bit of clear air behind him as well, and that's just allowed him to really run this like it's a practice session almost, and just be metronomic, not worry about what's going on around, and just focus on his own race, which, when you've got the pace to do it, is, you know, one of the best things you can be doing.
And Bagsy, he looks ultra smooth at the moment as well. There's very, very little mistakes coming out of that car right now. As you can see, Bolger getting a slide on through the second part of the chicane at the back. Where Xerus, as Michael just said, very, very, happy at the moment, in a good place, and just ultra smooth.
Yeah, and Xerus is a pretty straight shooter. He would have seen Devonish spin out behind him and realise that's one of the big... we see him have a slight lock up in the final hairpin. That'll be one of his big threats for this race, who's now further back down the field.
And another 26.5.
Almost 30 seconds adrift. He doesn't have to do anything other than drive comfortably, and clearly that's what he's doing at the moment. He's just going to pump in these laps and enjoy himself. What's the point in changing anything different?
What's interesting is something that's a little bit different going on right now, with comments coming through in the live chat. One of the drivers who'd normally be out there tonight, Rhodey, actually having a listen to the banter that's going on, or actually the lack of banter that's going on in the Discord channel at the moment. Apparently it's eerily spooky right now. Everybody's just knuckled down and concentrating. It's like you could hear a pin drop almost, which is a bit rare, because there's usually at least a few people, talking to each other in various points in the race about, hey, I'm, going to come up to pass you type thing, or talking strategy or something like that. Bit
Speaking
rare to
of
hear
which,
there's nothing.
Looks like Will Devonish is planning on ringing up Lewis Wedding over Discord and saying, hey, I'd like to pass you. It's 4th position, so we'll see how strongly Lewis Wedding defends, but Devonish has really zeroed on the back of him in the last lap.
Yeah, this is the battle we've been waiting for, I think, ever since Devonish had a bit of a spin. 5 or 10 laps ago, or however long it was now. I forget what lap number it was on. But yeah, you're right.
It's the battle we've been waiting for, but there's a 7/10 difference in their lap time, so I'm not sure it's the battle we've been waiting for, but don't know if it's going to be the one that lives up to our expectations.
I think what's going to happen here as we approach 1 hour left on the clock is Lewis is going to do his absolute best to keep Devonish behind him, and then as soon as Devonish passes him, he's going to come into the pits, because that would be what I'd do, just to really rile someone up. Keep them behind for a few laps and then come to the pits as soon as they pass. Although he might not have that much of an opportunity, as Devonish is already shaping up to try and make a move into the final corner. Now, these guys have raced against each other a lot, so they know how each other races. So expect them to be on fire with each other straight away, as we actually do have our first pit stop caller in Ozrob. And
Wayne Whitmore as well.
Wayne
Whitmore was in 20th place, so he's gone a lap down and Ozrob behind. So I was just about to say, we've started to get some takers a little bit earlier than the half-hour mark. So Bags is going to start scribbling down some notes as to who stops and when, I think, while we keep an eye on this battle for 6th and 7th place, and was for 7th and 8th, but that's because Ozrob has come in. Although Wedding's had a moment, he's gone deep at turn 4, ran across the ripple strip in the grass, and Devonish is now right with him, looking down at McLean's at turn 7. Nothing there. Wedding will hold up to Coppice. If Will can get a good exit through here, then he'll be on him down at the chicane. But he hasn't been able to do that very well. Wedding's going to at least have a little bit of separation for a couple more seconds.
So Ozrob's out of the pits in 19th behind Heath Dixon. So he's come out straight into traffic, and that's what we were saying about before. If you're not careful, you're going to come out in traffic, and this could affect his position compared to the people he was around, which is Greg Tara, Matt Schwass, Steve Bolger.
Oh, bit of a wide moment, wide on entry there for Lewis Wedding, and Devonish tries to stick the nose in. They've come out very close of that penultimate corner into the final corner now. Devonish has his nose tucked in. He's going to take that inside line. Wedding is forced high and dry on the outside. They're going to run side by side. down the straight, and it's the Huracan that takes the position. So it didn't take too long at all, but Wedding's going to come straight back at them as they go into turn one. Very narrow line from Wedding. Is he going to be able to get it pulled up? Yes, he does, and he blocks the apex from Will Devenish behind. So Wedding, very, very nicely done to recover that 6th place, but it's gone on like hammer and tong as they go down the hill on the 20th lap of this race, just ahead of the hour mark.
That was a beautiful...
Lewis Wedding was probably a little bit aggrieved that Devenish slowed down using the side of his car slightly. Probably was expecting Will Devenish to cede that corner to him regardless, but we'll see if Devenish can get back at him again. Tucked right up behind Lewis Wedding, but nothing doing coming up the hill here, or is it? Oh, he's had a thought, but he's thought better of it. Next opportunity is immediately down here into the chicane, but just looks a little bit too far back at the moment. So we'll try and stay in tight behind Wedding, follow his wheel tracks, and get him down to the hairpin, which you've seen dispatch several people down there and use that Lamborghini's extreme, it seems, acceleration advantage. But as he goes, he dives under brake. Big dive. Willing participant from Lewis Wedding. Lewis Wedding crosses under him, but they're side by side, so Devenish will now have the advantage into the final hairpin. Once again, who's going to blink first? Will Devenish, Lewis Wedding side by side, more bumping and driving, but Will Devenish has come out on top so far.
Is he going to have a look at another block pass down here again? Wedding got it. Yeah, Wedding did it perfectly on the last lap. The art of the block pass. Is he going to be able to do it again? And the answer to that is no, not quite. The block pass, you've got to cut off your opponent's avenue of coming back at you, and he didn't do it well enough on that occasion. And Wedding will go to the left. Devenish will try and go right around the outside and position himself for the right-hander at 4. But Wedding was slightly... Oh, was there a little bit of touch there? Wedding was slightly off the apex for turn 4, and he was in all sorts. Will trying to stick his nose in there and force the issue. And he's trying to force it again here at McLean's.
I think he almost went off there. I think he was trying to save the car from going off, but he's backed off a little now. Wedding has done immensely well through that first section. I think Devenish was wise to that first corner move and tried to undercut it, but didn't quite get the power down as nicely as he would have liked as they come onto the back straight once again. This battle has been enthralling for the 3 laps that we've had it.
Just in the pits and Bolger.
I just jumped on board with Wedding as well.
And Cracker's in there as well. I was also about to say that Wayne Spencer's in there as well. Billy Dougal-Salonga, Paul Morris had actually come in for a stop as well. So too had Heath Dixon about a lap and a half ago. So this is going to give race lead to Greg Turra for the short term until the field cycles itself. So through
Ross
he goes.
as well.
Brennan Ross has come in too. There's Spencer leaving. I think he's a lap down, I believe, according... Yeah, just
and Wedding in.
All right, so Wedding goes through, Swash goes through. Devenish stays out, which is probably critical to his strategy now. He hasn't got the safety car that he needed to get back up with the leaders. So he needs to keep going and just pump in some laps times while he's got some clear track.
Oh, no. So Cracker has just come out of the pits in front of his teammate, Brenton Foley. He does a good job to jump out of the way from Foley. So... that's been rectified, but now it will be Xeris dropping out in 6th place with Bolger just behind. I think that's that gap's actually shortened in the pit sequence as well.
Let's have a look. I think you're possibly right there. Yeah, it has a little bit. It was about 3.5 seconds when the stops were starting to take place. That was the gap I was keeping my eye on. It's 2.1 now, so it has come down. It's lopped about a third of that margin is gone. I'm wondering if any of that was to do with, as the tyres sort of wore on in the stint, that maybe Xeris just probably had a little bit of more wear than Bolger did.
No, I think Xeris was very comfortable on those tyres. I think it must just be in the pit sequence. We did see Bolger undercut Devenish.
Watch stays out
every single time that they pit together last time out at Bathurst. So I think...
Devenish is in. Here comes Will Devenish. So he's only gone 1 lap further than the race leader. Turra in as well, and Matt Schwass, as you said, basically the only one that stayed out on that particular occasion. And Foley is going around again, so he's able to get a bit more fuel economy out of that Viper than we first thought. And then back to Termo, who has moved his way up the field, but he's in as well now. That'll put Xeris back into P2.
And Foley has said that the fuel economy of the Viper is one of the reasons that he's picked that. interestingly enough, Matt Schwass again staying out for the long term, and now Xeris after that pit stop is inherited third position. Now, Bagsy, you made mention earlier of Ozrob coming out into traffic as there's a traffic jam on the entry to pit lane between the two Wedding Crashers Motorsport guys, and a yellow flag out at turn 1 that I'm searching for. Anyway, Ozrob has actually lost time to be behind, just ahead of Brendan Ross, who was well behind him out on track. So Ross has actually jumped Greg Turret in that pit cycle. It's just come out. And Ozrob is actually now stuck behind Luke Joyner.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to cut you off here. Wedding has managed to get past Devonish in the pit stop sequence as well. So coming in on the undercut has actually worked for Lewis Wedding.
Well done.
Well done on the strategy call there. We do call him a strategy master sometimes. And so Matt Schwass has come into the pit lane as well now. So that sort of cycles the field safe for Brenton Foley. But those two that were going at it for a little while are now got rubber that's only about a lap apart.
Matt Schwass in the pit lane, not able to get onto his pit boom because Gary Neville was in there as well.
Oh, so he's reversing in the pit lane too.
He's not even started his service
now
yet. He's finally able to get it now. That was a good 15 seconds at least of time lost for Matt Schwass. That's unfortunate. Having to share that pit boom with Gary Neville has cost him a lot of time.
Where was he in the overall order when all that was said and done? He was fighting with Brendan Ross and that I think around 4th, 5th, 6th place. So
and Greg Turrer, yeah.
I reckon he's going to lose out to Wedding and Devonish in that particular occasion because they weren't all that far behind.
Yeah, possibly, and that would be a big drop compared to where he was. Joyner is just coming into the pits as well. So Ross has already gone through, and Turrer is just coming onto the main straight as well. So there you go. That's that battle already by the wayside for Matt Schwass.
Schwass isn't even moving yet.
Yeah, Wedding's about to come through as well too. So he's lost it to Lewis Wedding. He's going to lose position to Foley in the lane, and he's going to lose position to Will Devonish as well. So that cycled him all the way back to 9th. And he was up as high as, as I said, 4th, 5th, 6th battle at one stage as well. So that's a huge loss for Matt Schwass.
Yeah, big off for Matt Schwass. Just unfortunate that in the 2 3-car teams that we have this evening, those two drivers, who was it, Gary Neville and Matt Schwass were paired together, and just as they were entering the pits at the same time.
I believe it looks like Greg Turrer has lost. He lost out to Brendan Ross in that.
Yes,
correct.
Cycle as well, hasn't he? So it's not ideal for Greg Turrer. Staying out has not paid off for him.
And he's lost a lot of time too. Like that's 7 seconds. That's a huge chunk of time.
I think that is in part to Ross short fueling, because he's gained a huge amount on Ozrob as well. So Ozrob was well down the road. He was about 5 or 6 seconds ahead of the battle for 4th place when they all started the pit sequence, and so he's only about 3 or 4 seconds ahead of Ross now. So Ross has done a bit of fuel trickery here to gain some track position, and it's worked out very nicely for him in the end.
Yeah, the only way we can sort of keep an eye on fuel numbers, given that fuel's the limiting factor when it comes to the pit stops, is how long they're stationary in the lane for. I don't believe we've actually got the tools to see what sort of fuel loads everybody has put on board, but that does mean he's going to have a slightly longer stop when we get to about 30 minutes to go.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it should have actually worked out a little better for him, but he's had a few very poor laps since the pit cycle. A very long middle sector last time around, and another big wiggle down the bottom of the hill. So could have actually been... I thought he was going to be a lot closer to that battle with Ozrob, as I'm watching Lewis Wedding make contact.
Yeah, I was watching that too, and I was about to say round 2 was about to go... Yeah, I was going to say round 2, ding, 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 was about to occur, and well, it was over before it happened. It was almost like the knockout punch. Devonish just sent it in there, and that was the end of that. Xeris now sets the fastest lap of the race.
Do you feel that should be redressed? Because he did. I don't know if he was making that corner without Lewis Wedding as a bit of a stopper there. I think regardless of the fact that Devonish made side-to-side contact with Wedding there and making that pass, there was no way Devonish was pulling it up for that corner. So I would say that requires a redress.
But apparently Devonish doesn't think so because he's maintaining that position and he's going to hold 6th as they come onto the main straight to start lap 26.
I might have to dust out some boxing gloves for these two after this race is over, I think. I've met them both personally, and they're both really nice guys, but I've got to think there might actually be a need to get out some boxing gloves and they can get their fisticuffs on after that. They've been going at it pretty hard and pretty fairly up until that point, but I do agree with you. I think that there was only one way that Will's car was making that corner, and that was with the contact with the Mercedes. So we'll see what happens after that. Look, if I'm honest with you, I don't expect Lewis will probably make a huge song and dance routine about it. They've been both racing pretty hard and pretty fair. And that being said, Lewis is still sticking in the wheel tracks of that Lamborghini too. Now thinking that maybe Will might be able to drag him up to the back of Greg Turrer, but still, 7 seconds from him to find. But there was just a bit of dust kicked up there, but I was wondering if it was Turrer, but I think it may have been Brian Walsh.
It was both. Yeah, it was both actually. So Ross had the lights on to warn Walsh. Walshy, as he does, ran off track to let the two guys pass, and then Turrer saw the Lamborghini off in the distance and decided to join him. So ran one or two wheels off in the dust, and yeah, lost a bit of time because he was actually catching Ross quite nicely. In fact, 4 or 5 tenths in the first sector and was starting to loom on that Bentley, but yeah, lost a bit more time there going wide.
Bagsy, at the moment, who are you keeping an eye on as sort of been impressing you this race so far, and who's your biggest disappointment after the opening sort of half distance of this race?
Well, at the moment, at least what's been impressing me in the last couple of minutes, or rather the last couple of laps, has been Xeris at the front. Obviously, we've been looking at him a few times and have been impressed with what he's doing, but we saw how close Bolger came to him coming out of the pits. We saw he closed that gap a bit compared to what it was, but it's absolutely blown out since then. Xeris is just, he took a lap and then he's back onto those just quick laps, consistent laps, fast laps. He's coming up to lap Noah Turrer at the moment, and a bit of traffic which is going to affect his lap times a little bit, but he just pumped in the fastest lap of the race on the last lap, and or rather the lap before, and it's just very slowly pulling away from Steve Bolger now, and it's still impressing me very much at how he's just managed to keep it all together. Will Devonish is probably the disappointment so far, even though he's in 6th and doing quite well. We saw a little bit impatient with Lewis there, hasn't addressed the position. Yeah, you said Lewis' wedding won't make a song and dance about it, but maybe a tasteful short film to show Will Devonish why he shouldn't have done that. Maybe in his future. But it's hard to criticise Will Devonish still, because he does drive that car and set up that car very, very well, and you'd be a fool to write him out from this race when we're only halfway through, haven't seen a safety car, and don't know what's going to happen, because if this gap gets closed back up by a safety car, he's going to be right there with Xeris, and Xeris's metronomic performance may start to crack a little bit.
I'm just going to bring our attention to the battle for 4th place. So Brendan Ross and Greg Turrer, as predicted, are now nose to tail, and that happened quite quickly. I think Ross had an off somewhere, because I don't think that the difference between them is too large, as Walsh gets a penalty probably for track limits abuse. Just on the note of Xeris's lap times, here's his lap time since he came out of the pits. A 26.6, a 26.3, a 26.2, 26.5, 26.3. So a tight cluster of laps times there. And remember, just before the pits as well, he put in a row of, I think it was 5 26.5s in a row or something. So metronomic is the word of the day when describing Xeris's performance. And again, a 26.8 while passing 2 cars, as Turrer takes a big dive into the penultimate corner on Brendan Ross. There's a yellow flag in that sector.
That's the team.
Wayne Whitmore.
Yeah, that's
Rossi's teammate.
Yeah, that's Assistant Bentley now. Did he get the pass done under yellow flags? That's what is the debate was there. Maybe he was already alongside when they entered the yellow flag zone, or maybe the spin happened just as the job was getting done. Whitmore's gone deep off the final corner again as well. Actually, I think he was more so getting out of the way of Devonish and Wedding, who are now closing in on this pairing as well. So this is about to become a bit of a 3 or 4 car train in the next lap or two as well. And whoever can lead out, I guess, out of this. Ozrob is only about 10 3/4 seconds up the road. Still plenty of time on the clock. Safety car! Bang!
Yep, big
on
crash. big crash of the hairpin between 10th place Aaron Thomas, Line Mitch, and Termo.
All right.
I believe it may have been Aaron Thomas into Line Mitch. I only caught the end of it when they're all piled up together.
All right, here we go. And this is really awkward timing too, because this is right on the half distance mark.
Oh.
So here it is. Thomas went deep. Termo got into him, and Line Mitch had nowhere to go. So teammate, or the Castrol Aston Martin gets into the back of the Matt Harvey Repair and Tune number 91, and the sister car on the Matt Harvey Repair and Tune team had literally nowhere to go.
And interestingly enough, Thomas has just driven past the safety car. Not sure if he's been given the directive to do that as the rest of the field backs up behind. But he was the first one on the scene there. And yeah, he just went straight on by. We should, of course, be looking for Xeris as the leader of the race.
Yep.
As Brian Walsh gets another penalty for track limits abuse.
I think what he's tried to do there actually is tried to serve the drive-through, maybe, and he's been pinged for going through the pit lane. I'm just waiting to see if Live Racers catches up to tell us that. Maybe
he just went through the S's, so
okay, there we go. Yep.
Yeah.
You can look at that, I can't. That's the downside of this arrangement. But yeah, now the biggest issue here is, you're right, the safety car has come out and it's picked up Lime Mitch, who is in 11th place. And 10th place man, Aaron Thomas, has gone around. Now, the leaders are also on lap 28. Just started, so they're on completed 29 and about to start lap 30. Now, they're going to catch the back of this train. I'm wondering whether when the train forms up that they'll let the other cars go or not. Okay, so Xeris is going ahead of Paul Morris there. So he's obviously being directed to move up to the back of the safety car. And here we go.
So these guys should then get the wave around.
Yeah,
and
there they go.
There goes
Yep,
Mike Pitts,
correct.
There goes Termo.
Yep.
And yeah.
All right, now Xeris just needs to be a bit careful here, because I think Wayne Spencer's also being given the wave around, and I'm not sure if he knows what to do there. Bagsy, you might just have to disappear, I think, down into the drivers' chat and just make sure the drivers know what they're supposed to do with regards to taking the wave around, because two cars have gone through. Xeris has now got lap traffic between them. As there's a bit of faking out going on in the pit lane as well. Now, did
Bolger goes in.
Yeah, Bolger went in. I was about to say, did one of the gravel shed cars come in? It was Steve Bolger.
I believe there was also a spinner. I think it was Cracker spun.
And Devonish is in as well. Devonish and Brendan Ross are in as well.
Yep, Luke Joyner's in as well. So there's a little bit of something going on at that pit lane entrance. There goes Termo. So he's all the way up to P12, and he's one of the ones that's taken the wave around. So they'll get onto the back of the train again.
Foley comes in as well.
Okay, so this is now scramble strategy. Penalty for Luke Joyner. That's a pit lane speeding infringement. So he came in for a stop and has been penalised. Bolger is okay. No penalties for him there. And where did the rest come out in this? So Devonish has come out P7. He's lost position to... Well, Aaron Thomas has gone through there, ahead of Joyner. And that's Brendan Ross behind him. Now, who else is currently stuck in the lane? As our camera gets a little bit sort of wigged out here, we'll just zoom in and see who's still in the lane. It's the only one left is Brenton Foley.
So now, just quickly back to the tail of the safety car. We've got a bit of a mess going on now, because it's Cracker and Noah Turra who are behind Xeris, and then Wayne Spencer and Billy Dougal Salonga. So I'm not sure what's caused that trading of position. But yeah, it looks like Spencer's been given the short end of the stick there, it appears. Yeah,
something's not quite right there, I don't think, with how this is all unfolded in the strategy. Xeris has got, 1, 2, 3, 4 or so, or even more lap cars between him and the next place man. Now,
which is now Ozrob.
I believe that's due to those who are, because the people who are a lap down can't pit until the second time through, so we might see a few of them go in now.
Yeah, so we do expect that'll happen. So yeah, there goes Crack Up. So that solves one of those questions. Now Noah Turra decides to stay out. So too does Paul Morris.
And
now I'm wondering if Paul Morris is being told to take the wave around here, and yes, he is. So there he goes. So that takes care of that little next question of the next car. And I think, here we go, the safety car is just slowing up a little bit here.
I just want to know what's happened to Wayne Spencer, because he was one of the cars that probably should have taken the wave around, and in fact has lost positions because of that now.
Where's he at the moment? So
He's
I
in,
believe,
he's
I
in
believe he
17th,
was.
16th.
I believe he was meant to take the waiver in. So I did see something pop up about him. Yeah, the game popping up saying he should take the waiver out. As Cracker gets a speeding penalty for drive through.
And now we've got Ozrob in the pit lane as well. So that's another one of our top runners, or front runners, getting a pit stop out of the way. Very long
here we
to make
go.
it to the
Spencer,
end.
here goes Spencer. So Spencer's just gone past Noah Tara. Now he's being given the wave around, so he's got
There
to
we
get his
go.
skates on. So that's another one that gets his lap back. What about Noah
And
Tara
there's
now?
Wedding just gone
in
off.
the
Wedding's
wall.
just gone off from 4th, 5th, 6th, and he's out.
Out.
Oh dear.
That must be an internet issue for Lewis Wedding.
That's got to be. If that's the case, we can't cycle through fast enough to pick him up. But Wedding out of this one.
Yeah, he's just come out of turn 7, gone onto the inside, and yeah, just gone straight into the wall. I don't think it was an internet issue, because he was definitely braking on the way into the wall. It might be a hardware issue or something. We'll see if he pops up in the live chat to tell us what's happened. But that is a really weird incident, and that is something that is going to change the face of the second half of the race.
Just getting some word coming through as well that there's a little bit of an issue with the safety car. Roddy's saying it's on the fritz at the moment, so it must be giving out some weird instructions to the crews right now. It's been out for how long now? This is the second full lap that I think it's been out for. Lead lap cars have already been in. The other cars have already been in. Basically, start thinking about the strategy thing here, because it came out right on the half distance mark, probably too early to take a stop. So I think Xeris is in his right mind, is correct to stay out here, and he'll have to take a stop a bit later on. He'll be able to run a little bit deeper on this stint now as a result of saving fuel, which means a shorter fuel stop on his second and final pit stop. But if there's no more safety cars from here on in, I still think he's in the box seat here.
Yeah, you'd think so. It'll all depend on what happens between him and probably who's going to be his closest rival, Will Devenish. And Will Devenish is currently in 6th and did pit, so he has fresh tyres and a full tank of fuel along with Steve Bolger. So Lime Mitch did not pit, Matt Swash did not pit, and Greg Turra did not pit. So there's still a bit of traffic for Devenish and Bolger to get through, that's certain. But they all definitely have to pit one more time, at least at the moment. We know that regardless, you can pit now. What would be interesting would be if this safety car stays out another 2 laps, maybe pitting this lap and hope for another safety car, then you definitely get to the end. But then you'd be struggling for tyres in the end.
Yeah.
Word coming through on the live chat that Lewis Wedding has retired to actually try and sort out this safety car. So very noble effort from Lewis. Unfortunately, he's sacrificing his race for the good of everyone else, which is a noble thing to do. But I
think he realises there's possibly going to be some penalties if people are out of position here, similar to what we've seen previously in some races where drivers being told to stay behind the safety car, not supposed to be there, and need to be, have penalties waived if that's the case. I was just trying to run through this in the back of my mind, gents, as to what may have happened. There were some cars, obviously, one lap that were about to go a lap down, so they were technically on the lead lap. The safety car would have let them go, and then it would have also let go whoever was the lucky dog. So that's probably why there's been a few people that have been told to go, and a few people have been told to stay, like Noah Tara. Race controllers have issued a stop-go penalty to Xeris. Now, this is probably what Lewis Wedding's got to sort out here. That's clearly because the safety car has gone into pit lane. So that, I expect that stop-go penalty to be revoked as we go back to green flag racing with 37 3/4 minutes remaining, and already a little bit of a logjam of traffic to sort. Xeris is going to bolt here. Greg Turra has managed to clear the Wedding Crashers Motorsport car. I think that's the Gary Neville car, and the next man up is going to be Matt Schwass to clear that car and Lime Mitch.
So I think if Lewis, if you're listening, make sure that you check that there's not other penalties that have been caused as well. So we ran into that issue at Curvello. Hopefully we don't run into that issue again. as we've got Lime Mitch and Matt Schwash in a battle for 3rd and 4th. So in the end, that pit lane mess for Matt Schwash actually hasn't worked out too badly for him, because he's now sitting in 3rd, and then Steve Bolger and Will Devonish are 5th and 6th, with Brendan Ross, Brendan Foley and Termo the next group on the track.
I just
So
noticed
the penalty has already been removed from Xerus, so he is good to go. And it was just Xerus who had it.
and that's what we expected here. Now here goes Steve Bolger having a look at Lion Mitch. I was about to say that Brendan Ross actually lost 2 places on the opening lap, one to Will Devonish and one to Steve Bolger.
Oh,
when he
Lion
went
Mitch
deep
has
at
picked
4.
Bolger's picked the wrong spot to try and do that, and Devonish looks to capitalise, uses his teammate as a pick, and takes Bolger in the hairpin.
Wow.
Big move by Devonish there, and this is still going to go on as well as Lion Mitch and Matt Schwash go into the final corner, and that's a big gaggle of cars there, all jostling
Foley
position,
off.
and Foley goes
Foley
wide.
off at the bottom, and he's dropped about 3 or 4 spots as a result of getting on the grass there. Massive logjam further down the back end of this top 10, as Matt Schwass is sort of the lead-out man here for Will Devonish, the wrong team. Foley trying to get the move done on Gary Neville, who's about to go a lap down, and there he goes. Termo's in there too. So too is Wayne Whitmore's trying to get his lap back, as well as fight Gary Neville for what is P15 and 16. Let's cycle back through the top of the field, because Lime Mitch is doing his utmost to defend from 2 Lamborghinis at once. Actually, make it 3.
He actually just got past Matt Schwass, so very well done by Lion Mitch there. And now that's opened the door for Will Devonish come up the inside of the next corner. No, Schwash closed the door. No, he doesn't.
This doesn't go.
That's a
no.
big
Three wide into Coppers. Did not go. Did Wedding? Did Will Devonish come out? Yeah, and he knows. He's redressing.
On anyone, that is on Devonish. That is on Devonish being impatient, and he's caused Lion Mitch there to lose 6 or 7 positions. So
and he's redressed the spot. Because that was.
I still think. This is
Here we go
bloody soapbox. I think that even though he's redressed those positions, that deserves a penalty, because there was no way, as he passes Lion Mitch again for that position, there was no way he was going to get through both Swash and Lion Mitch without contact. And in the end, he's just ruined Lion Mitch's race. So, Will, that is actually a pretty poor racecraft, and I'm quite disappointed.
Wow.
Okay, I'm done.
That's fair enough, and yeah, it's a good position to take, because it really was just some not very good driving from a driver we traditionally see excellent driving.
And there's actually a little bit of poor driving there from Brenton Foley as well. He actually escorted nose to tail Brendan Ross off the road at turn 1, so he's decided to lay off and give that back to him. So there's another spot that Brendan Ross has lost. He's actually lost 2 there, one to Osrob, one to Termo.
We've actually got Lewis Wedding, who's just joined us here in the box. So I guess we'll see Lewis, I'm guessing, here with a bit of an explanation about what was happening out there.
Yeah, it looks like the game is just playing up with a lot of the guys, and I figured because I couldn't pit onto the safety car because I think at this circuit the amount of cars and the pit boxes assigned to them for whatever reason meant I was sharing with, I think multiple people were sharing with the wrong cars and teams, and I went to go into the pits and had a car in there, so I had to keep going, and then with all the people having issues, I decided just to pull out it, and so I saw the penalties. I'm not sure what happened with Xerus' penalty, but he was one of the guys that the game was going berserk with. So went through and cleared that, and I think Brian Walsh, initial one, he did serve an initial drive through, but he must have picked up another one again due to the game.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for doing that, Wedding. A shame that you had to sacrifice your own race for it. Just quickly, that battle between yourself and Will Devonish was pretty fiery. Any quick comments on that?
Yeah, I didn't want to let him pass. I got a couple taps, and I was like, well, you tapped me to get by. I'm not going to make it easy for you. So
yeah, fair enough. Yeah, good work.
Thanks, Lewis. Yeah. Let's have a look at. We're looking at this battle on screen at the moment here. This is Termo trying to get past Osrob. In the same breath, he's trying to keep Brendan Ross and Brenton Foley at bay as well. Now, he did get the move done down at the Melbourne hairpin, but then Osrob got him straight back at the final corner. So Termo's having a little bit of an interesting run. Look at that, up 13 spots from where he started as we get close to a half hour remaining. He's certainly feisty at the moment, but he just made a bit of a mistake there off of McLean's and just managed to hold off Brendan Ross through Copper's corner, but he just got a little bit out of control there, and maybe the big Bentley's lining up a big pass.
Yeah, one of those things in that pack battles is you kind of have to balance attack with defense. You can't be a bit too exuberant to try and attack someone without maybe leaving the door open. So I think Tomo just got a little bit too excited there coming out of turn 7, and lost a bit of time to the man he was trying to pass, which has put him into the clutches of the man trying to pass him.
We've also lost a couple more drivers in the last 5 or so minutes. We lost Wayne Spencer and Gary Neville is also out of this race. So that's both the Spencers out of this one, unfortunately. Still means we've got 18 cars in the field, though.
Yeah, it's a very healthy field tonight. Just to touch on what Michael was saying before with Will Devenish, it's one of those things where the drivers are very much encouraged to redress positions when they have a stuff up or an error, which is so they don't have to be many post-race penalties. We don't have to have races decided after the broadcast is done and after everything's said and done, and have some more concrete results that we can give everyone at the end of the race. We don't want potential penalties hanging over their heads. But there are some situations, and I think Floody is 100% right here, where it's very egregious, and sure, you did redress the position, but probably should have thought about it and not done it, and maybe get an extra penalty on top of that.
Ooh. As Matt Schloss cuts the S's, which allows Will Devenish to pass. Yeah, I think the way that the supercars work through it is it's like careless, reckless, and dangerous is their 3 penalty levels, and you can redress a careless incident, within reason. But I would classify that move from Devenish as reckless. It was a bit hot-blooded, not really taking into consideration what was going on around him, and very impatient. So with a reckless incident like that, I don't think a redress is appropriate. I mean, it's probably, the right thing to do short term to sort of say, hey, sorry, Lime Mitch, who gave him a bit of a flash in response to say, thank you very much, in a very sarcastic way. But in the short term, maybe redress just to sort of cool everyone down. But I think that needs to be looked at afterwards. And I think Will, being the sort of guy that he is, would put his hand up and say, yeah, I fluffed that and probably deserve a bit more as well. At least you'd hope so.
Yeah, I do. I do expect there'll be a bit of a post-race look at that, and it's not the only incident. I think that'll probably come up as a post-race. I expect there'll be 1 or 2 more ones that we haven't captured on the broadcast that do need a bit of attention. That being said, there have been some really, really good racing moments tonight as well. And Wayne Spencer holding off some seasoned veterans earlier in the race for a number of laps, is testament to some of the driving standards that we've been trying to achieve over the last week or so. Just allowing people to race, but also, as we said, the way we summed it up the most is race hard but race fair.
Yeah. Just quickly, returning back to battles on track or action on track, we have passed 29 minutes remaining, so from this point on you should be able to take a pit stop and make it to the end. There's a few drivers who are on the off strategy at the moment, including Steve Bolger, Will Devenish, Brenton Ross, Brenton Foley, and Luke Joyner, as well as Ozrob. So expect them to go a bit deeper. And in fact, we do have the first spell of those final pit stoppers, who, funnily enough, includes Brenton Ross. So he's obviously looking to a short fill here to get to the end. And he's already on his way. So good job, Rossi.
Where's he feed into this? Because Aaron Thomas came in as well. So did Paul Morris. So Rossi just trundling down the lane. He's going to come out P10. I think he's actually going to come out with some clear track around him as well. So that's nice. Dropped into.
A lot of clear track around that point at the circuit, as the leaders are just coming to the second sector mark now.
Foley drive through, and that's going to be, if he was he in the lane?
That's
or did
track.
No, that's track limit.
I think he's just ahead of Termo. Yes, he is. So where did he pick that up? Let's have a look at
I think on the exit of turn 7, it looks like.
Here he is, coming up to turn 7. McLean's right now. So, and he got through the first part okay there.
Immediately after.
No, I don't think he got it done there. Must have been somewhere else. Oh, he took too much at 8. He took way too much on the right-hand side at turn 8. That's what he's been done for. You just saw it right there on the replay. And he's been done again, probably going through the S's. So, Naughty Boy gets a slap on the wrist. And, he packs it into the final corner. Drifts it through. Brian Walsh gets a penalty as well. Now, Foley obviously was possibly looking maybe to serve that penalty right there and then, but Turmo was right there, so he couldn't cut across and chop his nose off and come into the lane. So I'm about to say, Naughty Boy is going to have to get a slap on the wrist and a tour through the drive-through for a penalty. And that's going to drop him down behind Turmo, but I think he'll probably be lucky to come out ahead of Brendan Ross.
Yeah, and let's not forget as well, Foley should have another pit stop to take as well.
Oh, gents, sorry, the last podium position is under dispute here. Will Devonish has got his elbows out with Greg Turra and has snatched away third place.
Much fresher tyres there. Or Devonish showing their great use, but Devonish is going to be stopped longer in the pits than Greg Turra if Greg Turra gets his fuel load spot on. So Turra, every chance he'll be able to jump Devonish back in the pits because they both have to stop one more time. But Devonish may elect to not take tyres, so that saves him 10 seconds right there.
Yeah, it depends
I would
short
say,
the stop's going to be.
Yeah, I would say for the guys who pit under that safety car, the Steve Bolgers, the Will Devonishes, they would likely not take tyres because you're unlikely to get a big yield from taking tyres with a short run to the line. For the guys like Turra and for Xeris out front, they might be looking at taking tyres just to sort of cover off that.
Oh, you have to take tyres.
Yeah.
They'll be shot by the end. You lose too much time.
I'd actually kind of be expecting Xeris to be in about the next 10 minutes.
Yeah, he should be in shortly. He should be in less than 10 minutes. He should be in the next 2 or 3 laps, I think. The interesting thing is going to be whether or not the likes of Bolger and Will Devonish try and make it to the end. Now, that safety car period did end up being about 7 or 8 minutes, so it was not insignificant as I'm watching Xeris just run a little wide at the exit of Coppice.
That's probably the first time
Yeah,
we've seen him make a mistake this whole race.
So the interesting thing coming up to this last stanza of the race is, does Bolger try and stay out to the end, or does Will Devonish try and stay out to the end? And in fact, I think we've just lost Bolger. Bolger's gone off somewhere. He's down in 5th now.
Yeah, he's still on track. He's dropping like a stone. What's happened to Steve Bolger?
He must have lost a lap or something. It must be a lap penalty or something like that, because he's still dropping.
I'm just having a look to see on the replay whether anything happened. Maybe
Live Races currently has him in 2nd still, but that is still a little bit behind. But currently he is.
It could be just
it solved itself. Yeah. There we go. It has solved itself. We have seen AMS do this from time to time, and I just wanted to make sure that he hadn't gone off and missed a sector marker, which we have seen before. And if that does happen, you do sink like a stone. You actually lose a lap, and that would have been disastrous for Steve Bolger.
Foley in for his drive-through penalty. So yeah, it's a matter of, does Bolger try and sneak out to the end? It could possibly be done. And what happens between him and Xeris? Because I think it'll be a grandstand finish between the two different strategies as we come to the end of the race. There's 6 seconds between them now. If you said taking tyres is worth 10 seconds, and Bolger probably needs to take less fuel after pitting halfway through that last stint, we could be on for a really cracking finish.
Yeah, Bagsy, with the man with the strategy calculations on paper, I think at the minute is probably furiously working that one out just to see how much of an advantage Xeris does need to make that work. His advantage at the moment is 6.3 seconds. He's doing lap times that are in the high 27s though to Bolger's. Actually, just as the timing screen sorts itself out, 26.7 was Bolger's last lap, so it's a huge disparity right now.
Yeah, remember that last lap though was when we saw Xeris run a little wide at Coppice, which is probably his first mistake of the race, and straight back a lap afterwards, he's back in the 26, 27.
And Bolger 26.7 as well, so that pretty much maintains the status quo.
So yeah, these guys have been running a pretty metronomic pace. I think that's the word of the evening. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. As we've got 22 minutes left, 22 and a half minutes left, and expecting about another 14, 15 laps.
Yeah, I think that's where we're sort of getting towards. We've done 44 with a safety car. I think we're probably going to get we're sort of going to be smack inside of our window between 60 to 64 laps. I mean, 64 was the upper limit. Brenton
Foley disqualified.
Oh, that's a huge implication for this championship. No points for Brenton Foley tonight, and he was sitting I think it was from memory, second overall in the championship. He was 73 points, I think, to Devonish's 72, or the other way around. My mind's just gone a bit blank for a minute. But that's a huge swag of points gone begging, and with where he qualified and where he was hoping to finish, any points would have been welcome.
And I think that must have been because of getting 2 drive-throughs on the same lap. So he took one of them, definitely, but then he didn't take the second one in time. So, yeah, I'm not sure if that's a miscommunication from the game, but yeah, that's a big off as we've got Xerus coming into the pits with 21 minutes remaining.
There we go. So he's in, and Bolger goes around. So this is the key stop here. How long does Xerus stay stationary for, Bags? You'll have the timer out. There goes up on the jacks. Tyres being replaced. Devonish goes through. Third place man will now become Greg Turra. He continues to go through. Followed by Matt Schwass and Ozrob as well.
So we should be seeing Turra and Swash in shortly, so within maybe 1 or 2 laps, and then the rest of the field, it's a question of can they get to the end is going to be the big question mark.
I think Xerus will come out ahead of Brendan Ross here quite happily, as Brendan Ross has still got one more corner to go, and I think Xerus is about to be released from the stop. Better not be repairing damage, or he's going to be in trouble here. Brendan Ross is coming around the final corner. Brendan Ross is going to get past Xerus at this rate, and indeed he is. So that's actually not going to be good. Has Xerus miscalculated the strategy here?
I don't think so. He had 44 seconds stationary time, and usually it's about a minute for full fuel and tyres. So he may have put a bit too much fuel in. We'll see at the end. But he's been getting better with his strategy lately in terms of hitting those fuel numbers pretty spot on. We'll see what happens at the front, but there is a large gap from Bolger to himself.
Now, the interesting thing with Ross's strategy was that he pit under the safety car and then pit again. So that's actually an effective position gain from Ross, assuming that he can hold on to it to the end of the race. So watch this space, but that could be a bit of a masterstroke from Ross there.
Getting a little bit of word coming through as well that the game has also caused a few more problems than we actually expect. Brenton Foley actually did serve his drive-through, but it wasn't recognised, so was given a disqualification as a result of that. So that's a hard pill to swallow. Similar safety car issue for Wayne Spencer was released and couldn't catch the field before the restart. And yeah, so it's not the first time that something silly's gone on tonight with track cuts, safety cars. We've had everything tonight. One thing that we are probably going to have tonight, as you said, gentlemen, is probably a grandstand finish. For Xerus right now, this is all about sprint toward the end. He's got to pump in the laps very, very quickly and just keep himself in the hunt here. Now, there's another car, I think, it's just come into the pits, has it?
Termo.
So that's Termo. So that's a position gain for Xerus on that occasion, because Termo had gone through as part of being ahead of Brendan Ross. So that's one spot. And
now,
fair gap to Brendan Ross at the moment. So Xerus has got a bit of clear air to work in.
Yeah, I think Xerus must have overfueled. I was just looking back at his previous lap times, and the difference between his first stop and his second stop was only 2 seconds. And there was certainly more room, I think, to lower that fuel deposit, because we've only got 20 minutes left in the race now. So I think Xerus might have overdone it with the fuel, as we see Greg Turra and Matt Schwass come in to make their final stops on this lap.
All right, so let's keep an eye on this, Bagsy. So here are the drivers that were in positions 3 and 4 on the road before they stopped. And in they go. Tyres for Turra.
No tyres for
Schwass. Okay, so
Schwass has done tyres.
Okay, so
he's just got up now.
All right, now Brendan Ross is coming around the second to last corner. He's got a little bit of lap traffic.
Xerus should quite easily get past these two of Turra and Schwass, because he's not too far. He's actually closing on Brendan Ross pretty
he's
fast.
pushing a bit hard, though. He's gone deep at the final corner. Lost about a half a second to 3/4 of a second there, though. But he is going to get the job done. So he's going to go past Schwass, and he's going to go past Turra as well. And Turra will maintain his advantage over Matt Schwass in that particular stanza. But he's just going to come out behind Aaron Thomas too, and Thomas has now picked up a spot too. Now, did Aaron Thomas stop under safety car, or did he go through?
I don't have that written down.
I think he may have gone through.
Yeah. So that's interesting. We'll keep an eye on that one because that would be a very good result if he pops out in what's that, 5th position at the moment?
He's
6th
currently
position?
6th right now. So I do recall seeing him going through when a number of drivers came into the lane, but I don't know if he stopped afterwards. But I get the impression maybe he hasn't stopped and still has one more to do. Maybe just going slightly longer into the stint. What lap times has he been doing? He has been sitting around the 129 mark, so I'm wondering whether he has been saving a bit of fuel.
It would be a masterstroke if he actually gets it done. Yeah, 29s recently. He did come in on lap 40, so that would have been just after Brendan Ross.
Okay, so that's touch and go to the flag then in that case.
Oh, that was just before half an hour to go, so I think it should be okay. He would have just bulked up on fuel, but it will be interesting to see if he can hold off the likes of Tara and who's that? Matt Sloss behind him.
Ross.
It's coming under fire already from Greg Tara, so we'll keep a quick eye on this one, I think, just as they come across the line.
Yeah, he was looking to try and make a move stick through the chicane, but they ran side by side and a little bit of side-to-side contact. And Tara just let him have the position and thought he'd try another go. He's going to try and line it up. Takes a narrower line out of Redgate here as they run down through Hollywood and down through the Craner curves to the old hairpin at turn 4.
Whoa,
different lines,
very
overcommitted.
deep.
Overcommitted big time, did Greg Tara, and that's put Matt Schwass right within striking distance now. Lamborghini's going to strike very quickly. Swipes his front nose across the rear bumper of the Porsche.
That was, I think, very lucky that Tara managed to hold on there. I think he might have even been just driving in his mirrors a little bit because it almost looked like the Lamborghini had nowhere to go coming up the mountain, coming up the hill rather. Very close.
Yeah, extremely close on that particular occasion. That being said, Aaron Thomas is doing a pretty solid job doing similar thing to what Wayne Spencer did, defending well Paul Morris with the drive-through penalty. Backed it in, Tara's gone! Tara's gone. So that was just overdriving it into the chicane, just a little bit too late on the brakes. Rear locking was on, tried to turn the car while the car was still under brakes and snapped sideways.
He actually caught the rear of Aaron Thomas, just tapped it, just enough. And because all the weight in that Porsche is in the rear, it unsettled the front, and that's what sent him around.
And that's actually allowed Matt Schwass to get through on the pair of them as well. So he took advantage of that situation rather neatly as well.
Aaron Thomas doing a good job to hold on to the car there as well, despite the rather chunky Porsche giving him a bit of a bump in the rear. Greg Tara is continuing on. He doesn't feel the need to bit for damage. We'll see if he is damaged, though, because he's got Lime Mitch fairly close to him now. That gap that was over 10 seconds is now down to about 2 or 3. So if he has got damage and is nursing that car to the end, Lime Mitch will be a threat to him for his 8th place.
Xerus really pushing it here. Brendan Ross is off the road.
Ross.
That's an easy spot for Xerus. So he was starting to hone it.
Very much.
I was about to say, it's all coming up Xerus at the moment. Got some passes done while cars were coming in for stops. Brendan Ross goes off the road. Now, he was taking time out of Brendan Ross as well.
Anyway, yeah.
The last time around, they actually, it was a 27.7 for Ross and a 26.9 for Xerus. So the times were coming down very, very quickly, or the gap was coming down very, very quickly. And Rossi just overcommits at the Coppice corner.
Yeah, I think that's a mental fatigue mistake from Ross. He just, as he hit the brakes, he was just on the entry of the curb there. So just with a wheel on the curb, and that was enough to send him around.
Well, right now, it's a Lamborghini 1-2-3 at the moment. And it's Steve Bolger in front from Devonish and Osrob. So I'm starting to get a bit tense now as to what the strategy call is going to be with these Lambos as they get to the flag. Right now, they're still doing pretty handy times. In actual fact, Steve Bolger got a track cut on his previous tour. And Devonish did a 26.9. Osrob did a 27.7. But the gap from Xerus to Osrob is some 40 seconds. And that is a pit stop. And that is a pit stop. And there's it's a lot further down the road to Bolger and co right now. There's a lot more time left on not a lot of time left on the clock.
The thing is, though, at the moment, we saw pit stops in that first stint of about, the longest we saw was 24 laps. So these guys all came in with the safety car on lap 30. So we're getting to that point where that 24 lap number, even if they start to stretch it because of the safety car, 25, 26 laps, should be mighty tight to see if they get to the end. And if they don't get to the end, the question then becomes how quickly can they transit the pit lane as Bolger gets pretty snaky out of that turn 8 corner. Yeah, Coppice, thank you. So it's gonna be very hard to see if these guys actually make it to the end, and if they do, or if they don't, rather, how close they're going to be to Xeris. So it's going to be mighty tight.
I don't think they're going to be too close to Xeris, unfortunately, for Xeris, because I was just having a quick look. My timing screen has become a little bit in error, but it looks like there's about a minute between Bolger and Xeris at the moment. And yeah, that's a very, very long way. And that's basically a pit stop for a full service pit stop, not the splash and dash without tyres we presume Bolger and Devonish will do.
Yeah, that's now the worry too. So the inverse strategy has actually started to work. So my concern was coming in at the half distance mark. Yes, you would have a short fill stop, depending on how much fuel Xeris could save, where he would come out relative to everybody else. Could he actually make it work? But it looks like the Lamborghinis are going to make this one work.
And that would be a little bit of a shame for Xeris, who has had the pace for most of the evening. It's just one of those things that when you have the pace, you kind of need to capitalize on it. And the Bolgers, the Devonishes, the Ozrobs, they've jumped onto the alternate strategy, and because of the lengthy safety car, that might actually have worked out well for them in the long term. I still think Xeris maybe took too much fuel at the end.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, we'll have to quiz him afterwards to see if he could have spent less time in the pits. But that normally metronomic lap time that we've been watching from Xeris earlier on has seemed to have gone away a little bit. He's starting to make a few little errors. That was a 26.9. We were seeing much better lap times from him earlier on in the race.
And the 26.9s are the same sort of lap times that the front runners are doing when they're in the 26.7s and 26.8s. Right now, the only person who's not doing those out of the top four is Ozrob, doing a 28.2. So I'm wondering whether Ozrob's playing a bit of a different strategy call here. He did come in on the safety car stops. If he's doing lap times that are, 2 seconds nearly in arrears of what the front runners are doing, is he actually trying to save a bit of fuel and see if he can maintain a podium finish?
Well, he certainly could be. He actually came in a lap after those front runners, so it was about a 3 or 4 minute difference between where those front runners came in. He's coming into the pits now, so unfortunately...
And so too is Devonish. So Devonish is in the lane, and he's actually already on the move. So he's a splash. He's splashed and dashed. He won't have taken tyres, as you said, Bagsy. Now, I'm not sure if Ozrob's doing a full service here.
It looks like he's up on the jacks.
Xeris is rounding the Melbourne hairpin now.
Yeah, there is light years between Devonish and Xeris.
Yeah, so that's going to be the best that Xeris can hope for now is a podium, unless the top two make a mistake. Where's Ozrob? Is Ozrob still on the move yet, or is he still stationary? Okay. All right, so this is probably going to settle the podium. Now it's just a matter of the position. So Xeris will be P3 after all of this, at least.
Yep. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not Ozrob and Brendan Ross get out next to each other. In fact, Rossi's just blitzed through, so it wasn't very interesting at all in the end.
No. Well, the only question mark, I guess, that comes out of this at the moment is Will Devonish, despite the fact that he redressed the position for the big three-way contact that was down at Coppice earlier in the race, or on the half-distance mark.
Sorry, Bolger's just dropped in now.
All right, so Bolger's gone into the pit lane now. Was whether Will Devonish will probably still have a question mark over his head that probably won't be resolved for at least a day or two until that's all been sorted out.
Yeah, and I don't suspect it'll result in a points or position penalty. Traditionally, we've seen these sort of penalties come as rear of grid starts or exclusion for qualifyings and stuff like that. So even if it does come to the end as Will Devonish crosses the line, Bolger out ahead still. If it comes to the head that Devonish does get a penalty, it will be unlikely, I think, to change the results of the race.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, some of the work that the admins have done behind the scenes is a little bit different to some of the different series. I know Lewis Wedding with the TCR series prefers the qualifying bans or the rear of grid starts. Just doesn't believe that the points penalties really serve any sort of justice. Whereas the other alternate strategy, take the likes of Phil Boat and Brenton Foley, in the Supercar series, they're more than happy to hand out time-based penalties for certain types of indiscretions. Like usually it's a 10 or 15-second time penalty depending on what circuit it's at, the nature of the offence. And in some cases we have seen big penalties handed out post-race. Tasmania comes to mind, where we actually had a person chalk up 2 separate penalties, totaled 40 seconds at Symmons Plains, which is three quarters of a lap.
Yeah, that's a fair cop, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, there were 2 separate offences in that particular occasion. Without going too much into detail, one of them was coming from a long way back into a braking zone where there was no opportunity to pass anyway, and the other one was some rear-end contact on a car. We tried to stick its nose in there where there was not enough overlap. So it's some silly driving, and probably was rightfully penalised on such a short-natured track where, you know, going off the grass basically ends your race pretty much, because you can't brake on grass, you end up in a wall. So different schools of thought for different series, and I guess the type of different racing. Not sure how it pans out typically in these series. There have been a few, you know, qualifying pans and pit lane starts, but we're not going to speculate too much on what they'll be. All that we do know is that there is a question mark over the number 15's head as to whether or not anything comes out of tonight's race.
Just an interesting note as I'm panning through the field, I'm beginning to see a lot more little mistakes, just like Matt Schwass running wide at the final corner. Just little things, little fatigue mistakes that are starting to creep into people's overall racecraft. So as we come to the last 5 minutes of the race, the field is pretty spread. I think the closest gap on track is now Matt Schwass and Greg Turrer for sixth place rather. And even that is about 4 seconds. So with the field so spread, everyone's just kind of in their own little world. And yeah, just a few little lockups, few little run wides, few little sideways moments starting to creep into people's race. So even though we only are just 5 minutes left, we could still see some changes for position if people don't keep the head on straight, really. Do you find it more difficult when you guys are racing in your various sim racing guises to run solo towards the end of a race like this, or do you find it more difficult to be in a battle with someone coming close to the end of a race?
I think it depends on what the situation is. If you're solo with someone closing on you, I find that a lot worse than solo while you're gaining someone or when you're in lockstep with someone else. It's always the anticipation of someone coming up behind you, as Brian Walsh picks up another drive-through penalty.
Is that number 5? Is that number 5? Is that a record?
No.
We're definitely not a record.
We're far from the record.
The record is a long way off still. In fact, probably will never be broken. I say records are made to be broken, but I think it would be something very, very difficult to beat.
Trust me, it's a record you don't want to break.
I may even have it in my notebook somewhere here about who got the most.
I know precisely who it was. It was Glenn Miles at the 2 hours of Abu Dhabi in the first half of last year. I think it was a record either 12 or 13. I can't remember the exact number, but it was high. It was extremely high. And look, to be fair, that's a circuit that is very difficult. It's very long. It's very difficult to get right. And I'm not surprised that there was a lot of out-braking manoeuvres, as Devonish has a bit of a lock brake moment at the final corner. But it is a very difficult circuit to get right.
I have found the Amazon's GT3 from Yas Marina, the 28th of April last year, so just over a year ago. And my final tally was 12 drive-through penalties from Lawrence.
Wow.
And 6 for Boak in that race as well. So it was also probably the one that had the most cumulative drive-through penalties.
Now, Michael, the other thing that's going on right now is as you said, there's a lot of mistakes creeping in. There really isn't a lot of close battles on track, aside from the Brendan Ross and Ozrob battle, which is starting to get a bit closer.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I didn't think they were actually...
Right behind Ross.
Yeah, I didn't think that was that close, but it looks like Ross has had quite a poor lap, a 19.1 versus an 18.7 in the first sector. And as we just see Brian Walsh coming out of the pit lane ahead of them, a very long middle sector and final sector.
Both Ozrob off the road, yeah. Ozrob was worse than Brendan Ross, so he just probably got a little bit greedy there, I think, Ozrob, and ran it off the circuit.
I wonder if Ross is in fuel trouble. He was the first of the front runners to try and pit to make it to the end, and that was on lap 39 by my notes. So I wonder if he's in just a little bit of fuel trouble. He did only do a splash and dash back then as well.
he did come in a lot earlier than probably a lot of these other guys did, as I'm just starting to get a little bit worried about the broadcast side of things here toward the back end of the race. Only 2 minutes left to go, but we have seen these before, and we did have this at Bathurst, and this is despite the fact we take as many precautions as we can to make sure that the broadcast goes smoothly. But with AMS doing AMS things, sadly, it becomes a little bit like that. A few people on the stream will just notice that there are starting to be a few frame rate drops as we get to the 2 minute mark remaining, and we'll probably need to just keep an eye on it for as long as we can. And I think we might actually have to go to a slight radio show here in a minute, gentlemen.
Well, we'll keep eyes on this battle. Keep eyes on this battle for 4th and 5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just started to give us a little bit of trouble here. So we are going to do our best to keep an eye on the second screen at the moment, but this is enormously frustrating, as it always is.
We'll go radio show for now, potentially, and see if you can bring the main screen back up before the end of the race.
Yeah, going to do my best to see what I can do with that one there. But let's just focus in on what's the main battle that we're looking at the moment.
We're looking at 4th and 5th between Ozrob and Brendan Ross. Rossi is still defending quite vigorously now, as Ozrob is on the tail coming up to turn 7, just coming up to the crest of the hill. Ross has about a car length over Ozrob at the minute as they go through Coppice, but he's lost it. He's got the rear out. And that's given Ozrob the inside line as an opportunity to try and overtake. They're going down towards the hairpins now, but Ross is back ahead of Ozrob and maintains it into the S's. So not nearly as an open door as I thought it would be for Ozrob behind, but Ross has to take the defensive line in the Bentley as they swap ends going into that penultimate hairpin. Ross with a very narrow entry and exit compared to Ozrob, and manages to hold that position still. Ozrob trying to look for that line into the last corner, but not quite there as we cross the line soon, and it's going to be 8 seconds left in the race.
Yep, it's about to expire
right
now. So the timer has just gone 0 now. Steve Bolger has just come out of Copper's Corner, heading down to the chicane. So this is the 59th lap. So we're going to get one more. So we're going to be spot on 60 laps for the duration here, and he's got a comfortable margin at the moment over Devonish. It's been sitting around the 3 second mark for most of the second part of this race. There's a drive-through penalty for Paul Morris, and that will be a track violation. I'm just looking to see where he is on the circuit. He'd actually found his way up to just on the edge of the top 10, so he was 11th, and it looks like he's been done somewhere down the bottom end of the circuit, probably down at turn 4, I think.
Quite possibly.
As the leader commences his final lap.
I've still got eyes on Ross and Ozrob, and it's very, very close this time out of Coppice. Ozrob gets a much better run towards the S's. But again, Ross just pulls ahead with that Bentley. That Bentley power just seems to have the edge, but slides it a bit through the S's. And now this time, Ozrob, he has to take the outside line yet again. Ross is doing a great work defending here, and it's as you were for now, at least.
Yeah, for now, but Ozrob really keeps that, or getting that overlap coming out of the corners and just not quite being able to make it. Definitely doesn't have the traction that we've seen other Lamborghini runners like Will Devonish have.
He tried to go a long way around at the final corner, and he didn't make it work, and he's lost a lot of track distance to Brendan Ross now as well. That just gives him a little bit of breathing room.
One more lap, one more opportunity for Ozrob on Ross.
Well, we're going down to catch our race leader here on the radio show. So Steve Bolger is going to be the first man to 2 wins on this particular season. So we're not going to get 5 different winners in 5 rounds, sadly. It's going to be a second win of the season for Steve Bolger to go with his win at Austria. Just one more corner to go as he comes around behind the pit lane complex and through the final corner for the last time. And another hard-earned victory, I'd say, for Steve Bolger, because Xeris had his measure in the opening half of that race, but he'll be mighty pleased to get home in first. Devonish home in second, so it's Lamborghini 1-2, as we said, albeit with a question mark, and Xeris just with one more corner to go now to be his first podium finish of the season.
Brendan Ross and Ozrob. Ozrob's looking for the inside of the chicane. He's got he slid it through on Brendan Ross. That was a beautiful pass. Is Brendan Ross going to have any say going into the final 2 hairpins. Osrob just takes the defensive line, and Ross has a big slide. He's going to spin it. Oh, almost loses it.
Oh,
And
Matt Schloss got greedy.
He had a chance to get that position, and unfortunately lit up the tyres in a mirror image of Brendan Ross, and is not going to be able to snag that 5th position from him. So Xeris came in 3rd, and then across the line very quickly, 4th Osrob, Brendan Ross less than a second behind, followed by Matt Schloss in 6th.
Yeah.
Then it is Greg Taro who's going to come across the line in 7th. And then a battle between the 2 MHRT BMWs for 8th place. Aaron Thomas on the inside of Lion Mitch as they go into the final corner. Very stalwart defense from Aaron Thomas. And he is going to take the 8th place ahead of Lion Mitch for 9th. So nice battle between those 2 BMW teammates at the end of the race there.
Yeah, very nice finish between those 2. And the man who's going to get 10th place is actually going to be Termo. He's just got a couple of corners to go. He's Paul Morris actually is the first man to cross the line 1 lap down. So the top 10 are the only drivers that are going to be home on the lead lap. 1 more corner for Termo. He's just in a bit of a lap traffic sandwich here at the minute, but he's kept his nose clean. He started 21st out of 22 cars and has come home inside the top 10. Pretty good drive actually from Termo.
Yeah, quite, and I think a nice way to finish his race compared to last week, where he was in a bit last fortnight rather, when he was in the wars a little bit.
Yeah, last round I think was a round to forget for Termo. That was certainly something that he probably walked away from and thought, what on earth have I got to do to get any luck at this place? But he's finished inside the top 10, so still gets a good all of points. The only man out there for the R Motorsport team tonight. Unfortunately, we didn't catch the last end of this race, but I'm going to have to do plenty of research just to try and figure out what on earth it is that's causing Automobilista to do what it does. And this is the strange part too, gents. We got through, well over 3/4 of the Bathurst race last time out, which was on a modded track, and then we ended up with some trouble with about 20 minutes to go. We had 2 minutes remaining on this one, and it's a stock, content track. And you would think it probably has the same sort of thing, but we've seen sort of this thing before, and we just don't know what on earth causes it to behave like this.
It's a little strange, but it's one of those things. What can you do with technology? There is only so much you can do, and sometimes there's little gremlins in the machine that causes issues.
Yeah, correct. It's an aging architecture platform, I guess, is the way you can word it as well. It's been around for a long time, so there are bound to be some problems. We work with what we've got here. But we're going to have to do something a little bit different. I have been reading a comment that I was handed saying that there might actually be a way for Automobilista to address more memory than what it is actually capable of, but I need to actually pursue that avenue and see what it does. I'm not even sure if it is actually able to do that or not, but I'm happy to look at it and see what it can do. But yeah, it's been a bit of a disappointing finish to the night, just not being able to catch the last 2 minutes and capture Steve Bolger's 2nd victory of the season. But nonetheless, he has got the 2nd victory of the season, and he maintains his lead at the top of the standings. As you lot, actually you too, can draw some straws and have a chat to these guys as they make their way up to see us.
Bagsy, I'll let you choose the first victim of our awful commentary. Nah, you can take the first pick.
All right, we'll start from 3rd and make our way up to the leader. Xeris, you were pretty much in control of that race for the most part, but then the safety car and the strategy ended up being your undoing. What was it exactly that lost you all that time in the pit stop cycle?
Well, over-fueling in the last one, but actually mostly me being distracted by the safety car because it was telling me to stay behind 5 different people cycling every half second. And so that distracted me enough that I didn't see the other 2 going to the pits, and that was my undoing. So I'm kind of really angry about that, and I hope no more safety cars ever come again.
Yeah, it's understandable. And were you planning on pitting at all during that safety car without the distractions, or were you thinking the best strategy was still to keep going and pit later on?
At the time, it was still to keep going and hope for the best. Safety, well, not safety cars, pit strategy is not my strongest point.
Yeah, apart from that, though, very much didn't have too many people bothering you. do you reckon without safety cars you would have had a pretty clear run through the end, or were there anyone you're worried about getting towards you? We saw Devonish was close in pace. Once he had his issue, were you just relaxed in for the rest of the race?
Yeah, I saw after Bolger passed Tara, he was keeping pace with me, so I picked up a little just to keep the gap, and then from there was just maintaining the gap for the whole race.
Fair enough. Well, commiserations, rather. Definitely the fastest guy out there all day today. Unfortunately, get third, but better luck next round.
Well, congratulations to the other guys, they called it better.
And speaking of one of those who called it better, Will Devonish, who had an up and down race, really, from second to, I believe, rear of grid very early on, fought your way back up, dropped back down again, and eventually second. So, what out of all that, what's the highlight for the race for you?
Having the shot at the victory, I think, after cocking up second or third lap. So the second race where third race now, I've had to fight my way through the field. So I need to sort myself out earlier on the race. Just these mistakes keep happening. So if we stopped having them, I think we'd be winning a few more races. But yeah, tonight, relatively happy with the pace. Decided not to take tyres in the last stop and crossing my fingers that Bolger would, but he saw through that plan pretty easily. So got to hand it to Bolger. He kept his nose clean all race and really deserved the win.
For sure. We saw Xeris, or rather heard Xeris talking about the safety car issues he was having. Were you having anything like that happening for yourself, or did you not have any distractions?
Would have liked the safety car to come out 5 minutes later. My tyres were absolutely knackered. The hairpins were near impossible to do in that car by the end of the race. But I'm actually glad the safety car happened. It pulled everyone back into line. I didn't have to make up 25 seconds on the leaders. Ended up only being about 10 seconds. So made the second a bit easier to grasp, I guess.
Definitely. And one other thing we saw, I believe it was coming out of Coppice, a bit of an incident with, I think, you, Lime, Mitch, and one other car. What was your opinion on that one?
So my game, I had a massive frame freeze mid corner, and I think it's because there was some special effect that happened mid corner. There was a bump between them two, and that caused my game to stutter for a quarter of a second. And when it returned, I was into the side of I think it was Aaron.
Match twice.
Match twice. Yeah, pulled that back, readdressed it. Hopefully that doesn't get looked at again.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It looked pretty bad. Sorry, I might have given you a bit of a spray on the broadcast. Sorry, Will. Just quickly before we move on to our race winner, you had a great battle with Lewis Wedding through the middle part of that race. You guys seem to keep finding each other on track. Do you enjoy racing against Lewis?
Really today? I think I had a good second, a lap faster pace than Lewis. He did well to defend through that period, but damn, it was frustrating being stuck behind him.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you very much for those comments, Will, and congratulations on your second place.
Thank you.
And then finally to our race winner, Steve Bolger. You're making a habit of these post-race interviews. Your second win of the season. I think this is your fifth podium or fourth or fifth podium for the season as well. Just take us through your race, because it was a pretty non-eventful race, it seemed like, for your perspective.
Yeah, it was good. It was difficult in moments, pretty intense. I was once I got past Tara, lost a bit of time at the start. I saw the other guys driving away, so I was keen to get past him. And then it was just settling down and trying to get into a rhythm, put a bit of pressure on Xeris, but we were lapping very similar times. And then we had the first pit stop, caught up. I think the gap got down to 2 seconds just after the pits, but on full fuel and green tyres, he was just too quick. And then, yeah, when the safety car came out, I think I was talking to someone during the week, pitting under the safety car just due to the fuel rate and everything seems to be the dominant strategy this season. So it went against me in the first couple of races, I guess, but today it worked for me.
Yeah. So was that always the plan then? If you saw a safety car, just come in and top it off?
You just save 20 seconds if you fill half a tank of green time, green flag time. So your track position just doesn't get you that much. So I was pretty frustrated with where I came out after the pits in terms of track position. But by the time I got clear and it was me and Xeris, it was I think 7 or 8 seconds the gap, and that was just not enough to cover the fuel.
Yeah, and come that last pit stop, you were pretty well in control of the race. Must be a nice feeling to make a strategy call like that and then come out clear ahead of everyone.
That's a bloody good change. But yeah, I echo Xeris. If we have no more safety cars throughout the entire season, I'd be a very happy man.
Yeah, fair enough. So with that win, you extend your championship lead into the second half of the season. This has been a breakout championship for you so far, hasn't it?
Mate, ecstatic. It's going really well. I think Will keeps shooting himself in the foot every second race, other than Bathurst, so that's helping a lot. But yeah, I think, and then Lewis not being able to race all the races has been a bit different to previous seasons. So yeah, really happy with how it's going.
Next race is Circuito Ricardo Tormo, Valencia. Have you done any laps on that one yet?
Be 0.
So are you excited to try out a new track and see where this series takes you?
Yeah, sure. I like doing practice in these cars, as they're easy to go and do laps in all the time. So I've been doing plenty of practice, I think, compared to every other series I'm running in. So that shows in the results. So happy to give it a crack.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely shows the results. Congratulations on your race win this evening, Steve Bolger.
Thanks, mate.
And now that brings us back to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Different looking podium for a change tonight. There's obviously 2 drivers on there that have had podium finishes before, and one that we welcome to the podium for the first time. Been knocking on the door for a couple of races, 2 fourths and a fifth prior to this, and now has a podium finish for AMSLs in GT3. So good to see Xeris up there. But most of the podiums for the season so far just split between the 5 drivers. So Steve Bolger, Will Devonish, Brenton Foley, and then one apiece to Xeris and Lewis Wedding in terms of podium visits, counting that they have wins on the board as well. So good to see an extra person up there for a change. It has changed the balance a little bit in the championship with Brenton Foley not finishing tonight. He stays put on 73 points. So Will Devonish goes ahead by 19 points. He was trailing by 1 point coming into tonight, so he picks up 20 points for a second place. Xeris now moves up ahead of Lewis Wedding onto 53, so he's outright 4th in the championship. Still within a shot of getting to Brenton Foley, and technically within a shot of getting to the leaders as well, but with only 4 rounds to go, the time is ticking away in terms of what can actually be achieved over the course of the next 4 circuits. So Valencia, Shanghai, Monza, and Watkins Glen are all that remains, and we will be done and dusted by the 30th of June. Now, in terms of what's coming up next, here's the next 4 upcoming events for Automobilista Australia. So Super 2 on Friday night. There's been a lot of hype in the Discord for the next race. Townsville Street Circuit this Friday, the 8th of May, coming to you on the Loose 89 channel on YouTube. Again, another one of the series that's seen a swelling of numbers in the grid. We've gone from what we had, I think, 9 cars at Tasmania about 2 months ago to upwards of 20 cars in the field. So a huge surge in numbers. Track Day Challenge being put together by Brendan Ross. That comes to you on the 11th of May. Another one of those fun challenge series. That's Pukekohe Park Raceway. We've just finished racing there in supercars the other week. Now, this is a slight change. TCR Oz was scheduled to be coming to you on the Loose 89 channel on the 12th of May from the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. At this stage, it does not look like that stream is going to go ahead. There's been a slight change in the broadcasting situation there, with only a couple of rounds remaining for TCR. And the word on the wire is that TCR will not make a return after the halfway point this year. It looks like there's going to be a different series coming along to fill that void. So a little bit more on that probably in the next 2 or so weeks. And then we get to Floodie's favourite series, the TCAC AWD. Another stock track, Londrina. So that will be on the Short Shift podcast channel on the 13th of May. So still a lot of racing every day of every week, right throughout the year here at Automobilista Australia, gents.
Yeah, it's a glutton. An absolute smorgasbord if you're looking for it. Yeah, a lot of different series going on. TCAC, as you made mention of, is another series that I commentate on with good mate Chris Riddell, and that's just an absolute hoot every single week, and produces great racing as well. Weight handicaps and the like in that to really close up the field. So if you're looking for a good laugh and a good race, jump on with us next Wednesday.
And then for us, Bagsy, the next time we go racing here on the Outward Broadcasting channel, it will actually be for the... Actually, I'm just looking at the entrance list here. The next one for the supercars is not until the 21st of May, which means that the GT3s from Valencia are going to take place on the 19th, and then we'll be back, and then it'll be supercars and myself and Hans Brunswick on the 21st of May. So looking forward to Valencia.
Yeah, Valencia's going to be very good, and we've seen that any track really will throw up a lot of different potential issues. Who knows what we'll see come Valencia. The interesting thing, though, we've seen the championship lead extend slightly for Steve Bolger, but we know it doesn't take much to lose that. We saw how much Foley's lost today just because of a DNF. That can happen to anyone. Anyone can have an off race or a DNF, and that'll just blow this championship wide open. So really, you've got to be here watching every race, because you don't know who's going to fall by the wayside and what that will have in terms of championship implications.
And the big thing about championship implications as well is every year in Automobilista Australia GT3 or Endurance Series, when we had it for the World Endurance Championship one as well, we've gone down to the final race to decide the championship, which is great from a viewer's perspective and from us as commentators getting to see that. But, you know, we've been spoilt for choice. First season was good, second season was, well, this is pretty cool, and then we got to last year and we've had 4 from 4, and you're just spoilt for choice. Well, it's not over yet. There's still plenty of time for that to happen in this series, although if Steve Bolger keeps going the way that he's going, it might be done and dusted with a race to go. But there's still plenty of time, still balance of 2 months to figure out that part of the equation, and that's where we'll leave it for tonight. Please drive safely as always, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.